Chapter 825. The Sun brothers were forced to a dead end, and they kept cursing at Chu Xiu. But at the moment, all they could do was curse. There were so many people present, and seeing that there were two powerhouses in the true fire spirit refinement realm standing on Chu Xiu's side, they were even more afraid to intervene. However, just as Chu Xiu was about to completely kill these two people, a flash of lightning suddenly appeared in front of him. It was Zhang Qingjin who intercepted him. Chu Xiu held the saber and frowned slightly, saying, "You want to protect them? As far as I know, you are not a nosy person." Zhang Qingjin said lightly, "I really don't like to meddle in other people's business, but this is not a matter of others' business. That ghost instigated us to kill Lu Fengxian and Brother Lu. His heart is vicious and insidious. Even if he can really exchange his life for us to get out, I will not agree. But now, in order to confuse us, you want to kill the two of them to protect Lu Fengxian, using the lives of two people in exchange for the life of one person. What is the difference between you and that ghost?" "Difference. The difference is that as long as I kill them, we really have a chance to get out. Personal grudges, Zhang Qingjin. Are you sure you want to care about this?" Zhang Qingjin also took a step forward and said in a deep voice, "It's not that I want to care, but I have to care about this matter. The righteous martial arts world has the righteous martial arts world's rules, and the Taoist Master Mansion also has the Taoist Master Mansion's rules. In the righteous martial arts world, there were actually only a few forces that were qualified to represent the entire righteous path. The Great Light Temple was one, and the Sabodhi Monastery was another. However, the actions of the Taoist Master's abode were different from those of the Great Light Temple and the Sabodhi Monastery. The Taoists were pure and did nothing. Similarly, the Taoist Master's abode also knew that the evil in this world could not be eradicated. Therefore, everything that the Taoist Master's abode did was not so much to eliminate evil, but to control evil. As long as the people of the Devil Dao didn't go too far, such as destroying a family under their noses, they were generally too lazy to care. Similarly, the Celestial Master Mansion would not care about the internal strife between the martial arts world forces, as long as the conflict was controlled to a certain extent. Because of the Celestial Master Abode's actions, the entire West Chu martial arts world had developed even more than the Northern Yen. Regardless of whether it was the righteous or the demonic, they all controlled their own destructive power to a certain extent, reducing a lot of internal friction. This was also the reason why Zhang Qingjin intervened. If Chu Xiu really killed someone because of a personal grudge, he might not care. But now, it seemed that Chu Xiu wanted to use the opportunity of killing the Sun brothers to distract them and indirectly save Lu Fengxian. Zhang Qingjin absolutely could not tolerate killing two people to save one. Chu Xiu looked at Zhang Qingjin with a little surprise. Perhaps he had to get to know this young celestial master again. He had always thought that Zhang Qingjin was the kind of person who was extremely indifferent. In fact, this was indeed the case. The famous young celestial master Zhang Qingjin was actually not the kind of righteous chivalrous man. But in his heart, there was a balance and a rule. This balance was given to him by the old celestial master. Although he did not know what chivalry was, nor did he know what righteousness was, as long as he could keep the balance in his heart, the reputation and status of the Celestial Master Mansion would be eternal. Sure enough, after he said this, the Sun brothers looked at Zhang Qingjin with deep gratitude. When they were in despair, only Zhang Qingjin came forward to save them. Even though the Sun brothers were utilitarian, they could not help but feel grateful to Zhang Qingjin. The Celestial Master Mansion has its rules, but I, Chu Xiu, also have my own rules. Zhang Qingjin said. "Oh, what rules?" Chu Xiu took a step forward and said coldly, "That is, no one can stop me if I want to kill someone." As Chu Xiu's voice fell, boundless blood qi emanated from his body. Strands of bloodlines were extending, which was very strange and terrifying. Chu Xiu did not bother to explain to Zhang Qingjin that the Sun brothers had led the way, which led Kuang Shiyue to kill him. As long as he, Chu Xiu, wanted to kill someone, no matter how long it took, no one could stop him. Zhang Qingjin frowned, and the evil-slaying sword in his hand surged with lightning. As soon as the sword was unsheathed, it turned into a lightning pattern and slashed down. Those bloodlines were torn apart by the sword qi and lightning. But at this time, Chu Xiu also charged toward Zhang Qingjin with the heavenly demon dance in his hand, and began to fight with him. It was not easy to defeat Zhang Qingjin, but it was equally difficult for Zhang Qingjin to stop Chu Xiu from killing someone. Previously, Zhang Qingjin had cut the bloodlines extended by Chu Xiu into pieces, but those bloodlines did not really dissipate. Instead, they turned into a blood mist that permeated this space. In particular, the Sun brothers had been completely wrapped in this blood mist. At this moment, a trembling sound suddenly came from the blood mist, like a heartbeat. The Sun brothers' hearts also suddenly trembled. Then the frequency of the trembling became faster and faster. The Sun brothers' hearts also beat wildly, completely out of their control. At this time, Zhang Qingjin also realized that something was wrong. He wanted to stop it, but he found that in the face of such a strange method, unless he could kill Chu Xiu, there was no other way to stop it at all. The frequency of the beating became faster and faster, causing the Sun brothers' faces, which were already pale, to become as red as blood. In the end, with a loud bang, their chests directly exploded, and blood immediately sprayed all over the place. Everyone present felt a chill in their hearts, and their eyes were full of fear as they looked at Chu Xiu. Although the Sun brothers had used all their strength to resist Chu Xiu, and their vitality was injured, which led to them being easily killed by Chu Xiu. But this strange method of dying without even knowing how they died still made their hearts tremble. At this time, Lu Jianghe laughed proudly in Chu Xiu's mind. My blood god demonic technique has already been very meticulous in the control of qi and blood. It's just a small trick, and they were shocked to this extent. What a country bumpkin. Chu Xiu snorted lightly and said, "Stop showing off. Take out your old blood demon hall's formation." Lu Jianghe said in surprise. "What do you want my old blood demon hall's formation for?" Chu Xiu said lightly, "Don't play dumb. I don't believe that with your eyesight, you can't see the flaws of this vengeful spirit. Help me this time, and there will be benefits in the future. I won't forget you." Lu Jianghe curled his lips and said, "If you really have a conscience, you should let me out and nourish me with your blood, so that I can reconstruct my body." Although that was what Lu Jianghe said, he also knew that he was now one with Chu Xiu. So he only said a few words and gave Chu Xiu a killing formation of the Blood Demon Hall. No matter what, Lu Jianghe was the hall master of the Blood Demon Hall in the past, which was one of the strongest halls in the entire Kunlun Devil cult. In the past, in the Kunlun Devil cult, there were many martial arts practitioners who were at the true fire spirit refinement realm. However, they were directly under Dugu Weiwei. An existence like Lu Jianghe, who was in charge of a hall by himself, was not a simple person. His eyesight and knowledge were quite outstanding. Shen Baochen and Wei Shuya couldn't tell what was going on. However, after Chu Xiu explained it to him, he understood. At this time, in the outside world, with the death of the Sun brothers, Zhang Qingjin did not continue to attack because it was meaningless. However, Zhang Qingjin's expression was a little ugly. In the end, he could not stop Chu Xiu from killing people, and he suffered a loss at the hands of Chu Xiu. However, at this time, Chu Xiu waved his hand, and the blood demon technique controlled the blood on the Sun brothers' corpses to float in the air. Because there was not enough blood, the Sun brothers' corpses were like dried corpses. Everyone present frowned. Killing people was just a matter of nodding one's head to the ground, and what Chu Xiu did was a little too much. Whether he did it to save Lu Fengxian, or to avenge a personal grudge, everyone understood. Anyway, it was not their business, so they did not intervene. However, not only had Chu Xiu killed them, but he had also started to humiliate the corpses. This was a little too much. At this time, Shen Baochen had already stopped fighting with Duguli. He frowned and said, "Chu Xiu, they are dead, but you don't even let the corpses go. You are too much." Chu Xiu said indifferently, "I'm saving all of you. I've already said that the two of them have been possessed by that ghost. After killing the two of them, I'll naturally have a way to bring everyone out." As Chu Xiu waved his hand, the blood actually gathered to form a formation, and the scarlet formation pattern faintly appeared on the ground. Seeing this scene, the ghost formed by the gathering of countless resentful spirits roared and rushed towards Chu Xiu in a frenzy. Everyone present was stunned when they saw the ghost being so nervous. Chu Xiu really has a solution? Duguli flicked his sword finger, and a scorching sword aura with the power to burn the sky erupted, blasting the ghost into pieces. Although the ghost could immediately recover in this space, it was still unable to get past Duguli to deal with Chu Xiu. In the instant that Chu Xiu's formation was completely completed, a scorching blood-red radiance suddenly blossomed, and a malevolent and evil aura burst forth, causing the ghost to instantly let out a roar. In the body that was originally formed by the black fog, countless blurry heads appeared, as if it was formed by these things. Moreover, the strangest thing was that the people with sharp eyes could actually see the heads of the Sun Brothers. However, at this time, the heads of the Sun Brothers kept swimming in the black fog, as if they were merging, but also as if they were repelling. In the end, the heads actually began to tear each other apart, and the scene was extremely evil. However, everyone realized that the black space around them actually began to melt, revealing the appearance of the surrounding pits. In the end, the ghost actually let out a cry, and the black fog dissipated, leaving behind pure mental energy that was infused into the unconscious Lu Fengxian's body. Lu Fengxian was suddenly infused with such a huge mental energy, and she suddenly woke up and looked around in confusion. At this moment, Chu Xiu couldn't help but sigh. Brother Lu's luck is really good. Just one nap in exchange for such a powerful mental energy. It's practically equivalent to the primordial spirit secret technique that I've been cultivating for more than 10 years. Chapter 826. The black space that imprisoned everyone dissipated completely. What appeared in front of them was a huge cave. There were white bones and skeletons all over the place. They looked horrible and ferocious. Obviously, these were the corpses of the people who had been abandoned by the World's Sword sect. Wei Shuya asked in surprise. How did you break the formation and kill that ghost? What Wei Shuya wanted to ask was what everyone else wanted to ask. Chu Xiu's success was too inexplicable. Could it be because of that formation? Chu Xiu smiled and said, I just added something to it. Actually, its weakness was exposed by itself. This thing was not a person, nor was it a simple ghost. Instead, it was the resentment and death aura of these martial artists after they died. In addition, it was an evil spirit created by this special environment. Therefore, it could be said that it was an existence with half a spiritual intelligence. It could think and know everything, but its existence was only for revenge. This thing is very pure. Its root is here. If we don't destroy its root, we can't leave unless it lets us go. We just killed those two guys. They must be full of resentment. So, I used their blood to draw a killing formation. I used a man-made killing formation, and integrated it into the formation of heaven and earth. This ghost is born from the resentment of the people of the World's Sword sect. They all have the same target of resentment. So they can gather such a strong resentment to form this ghost with intelligence. But the two people of the Sun family hate me. The target of their resentment is different. It is like 2 drops of ink in clear water. The final result is that everything is messed up. Everyone present was stunned. Was it really that simple? Of course, they couldn't be blamed for not thinking about it. Even if they thought about it, who would be as bold as Chu Xiu to try to kill people directly? Killing 2 people and allowing a group of people to escape. Chu Xiu's methods were not ordinary. At the very least, compared to the sect leader of the World's Sword sect, who had buried 90% of his disciples, Chu Xiu was vicious and merciless. Of course, Lu Fengxian was luckier. He had simply taken a nap and unknowingly obtained the spiritual power of the vengeful spirit. Although Lu Fengxian did not know any essence soul mystic techniques, there was no harm in having strong mental strength. When faced with mental strength attacks from other warriors, it could also play a certain role in defense. At this time, Lu Fengxian was still asking what had happened just now. Feng Qishao was quick with his words and told her about the scene just now. In the end, he even smacked his lips and said bitterly, "That vengeful spirit is really something. Why didn't it choose me? At least I use a sword, don't I? Shouldn't she be more compatible with them? Brother Lu, it's a waste for you to get this mental force. With your martial Dao style, you can only use this mental force for defense. My Sword King City has a secret technique that allows you to transform mental force into a sword. It's not that I'm not loyal. but Sorking City's secret techniques can't be divulged to outsiders. But Brother Chu has a lot of Essence Soul mystic techniques. Why don't you learn them from him? Lu Fengxian smiled and said, no need. Marquis Lu Wenho's inheritance doesn't only contain the 9 heavens fiend golden body and the demon god's unparalleled halberd, but also some scattered martial arts secret techniques. But Xue Wuxiang said that these things were either looted by Marquis Lu Wenho in the past or researched out of boredom. After cultivating the demon god's unparalleled halberd and the 9 heavens fiend golden body to the extreme, I wouldn't need these messy things, so I didn't waste time cultivating them. Now that I have a ready-made mental force, I only need to cultivate for a few days, and those secret techniques will naturally reach the grand accomplishment stage. Feng Qixiao's eyes suddenly widened. He directly turned around and walked away, not wanting to talk to Lu Fengxian anymore. This kind of luck really hurt his self-esteem. It was as if he got what he wanted. At that moment, the surrounding people were still searching in the underground cavern. However, they didn't find much useful things. When the sword sect of the world left, they had already taken away 90% of the sword sect of the world's items. The remaining people were trapped and killed here. Naturally, they didn't have any good things on them. They only had some weapons and swords with them. Moreover, the quality of these things wasn't too high. Occasionally, there were a few god weapons. However, due to time, the sword spirits had completely dissipated. Although there was still the foundation of a divine weapon, no one took it. Everyone hadn't forgotten the strange scene just now. Although Chu Xiu said that the vengeful spirit had completely dissipated, these things had stayed in this environment for over 10,000 years. They were probably already filled with resentment. It would be a little inauspicious to take them back and use them. Therefore, after the search was fruitless, everyone immediately left the underground cavern. However, when everyone just returned to the surface, a huge wave suddenly came, causing everyone to look in that direction. In the next moment, everyone immediately sped towards the direction of the wave. No matter what the wave was, it wasn't ordinary. It was definitely the birth of a precious treasure. At this time, 100 miles away from everyone, in front of a huge and magnificent palace, a powerful array Dao light soared into the sky. The aura was simply terrifying. In front of the palace, more than 10 warriors stood there with frowns. There were true fire god refinement realm and real pellet realm. After they found the well-preserved palace ruins just now, they wanted to open it first. Originally, they thought that after 10,000 years, the array must have decayed or been destroyed. However, they didn't expect the array to still retain such a powerful force. Under their forceful breaking of the array Dao light soared into the sky. Now even the people in the entire secret realm could see it. They had lost the initiative. Under the impact of the array, the palace plaque that was originally covered in dust was also revealed. There were 3 big words written on it. High Heaven Sect. And below the 3 big words, there was a small line of words. Illusory Realm 6-Branch Palace. The headmaster of the true martial sect, Lu Chonglu, stroked his beard and said, "It turned out to be a branch palace of the High Heaven Sect. TSK, I don't know if we are lucky or unlucky. Next, even if we break the array and enter, we have to be careful. This High Heaven Sect is not easy to deal with." Chen Qingdi stood aside with his arms crossed. He was surprised when he heard this. This High Heaven Sect is an ancient demonic sect? Chen Qingdi was a rogue cultivator. Although he was powerful when he defeated the World Alliance with a pair of iron fists, in terms of knowledge he was obviously not as good as Lu Chonglu and others who came from big sections. Lu Chonglu had a good temper. When he heard Chen Qingdi's question, he explained carefully, High Heaven Sect is not a demonic sect, but it is a top sect in the ancient world. And according to rumors, this High Heaven Sect is overbearing and ruthless. In everything they do, they follow the principle that those who submit to them will prosper, and those who oppose them will perish. They are above thousands of sections. Although they will not kill innocent people, they are not kind. As such, the things left behind by High Heaven Sect will definitely not be allowed to be touched by outsiders. Just looking at this overbearing spirit array, we just wanted to find where the array core was located. Yet we ended up triggering the entire spirit array. It's not hard to imagine what other methods are involved. Chen Qingdi chuckled and said, Those who submit to them will prosper, and those who oppose them will perish? Not bad, this high heaven sect is not bad. Lu Chonglu sighed and shook his head helplessly. He did not want to talk to a person like Chen Qingdi, who obviously had a problem with his worldview. The evil king Sheng Beixian, the sect leader of the evil extreme sect, was also present. He was dressed in a black robe, had a gentle smile, and had an extraordinary bearing. He did not look like a famous demonic sect tycoon at all. Headmaster Lu, the array has been triggered. I estimate that it will not take long for the others to arrive. Even if there is any danger, we have to break this array first. Why don't we join hands and temporarily put aside our sectarian differences to break this array together? What do you think? Lu Chonglu hesitated for a moment, then nodded. Everyone in the world thought that the true martial sect was the one who truly hated evil and wanted to exterminate the Kunlun devil cult. This was because it was the founder of the true martial sect, the immortal Ning Xuanji, who fought against Dugu Weiwei, which allowed the whole world to escape from the shadow of the Kunlun devil cult. However, in fact, the true martial sect advocated the true purity and inaction of Taoism. Their attitude towards the demonic martial artists could not be compared to the paranoid Chunyang Dao sect at all. In the past, Ning Xuanji fought against Dugu Weiwei. In the eyes of the people in the world, it must be for the sake of the world, and to eliminate demons and defend the Tao. However, only the headmaster, Lu Chonglu, knew that the reason why Ning Xuanji fought was very simple. There were not many reasons. It was because he and Dugu Weiwei were already standing at the peak of the world at the same time. The two of them would definitely fight. The true martial sect had Ning Xuanji's protection, so they did not have to worry about the Kunlun devil cult at all. However, whether it was Ning Xuanji or Dugu Weiwei, both of their attainments in martial arts had reached the limit of the world. Everyone wanted to see if there would be other scenery above the peak. Therefore, this battle was imperative. However, the people of this world always liked to attach all kinds of labels to some legendary figures. Those who could fight against Dugu Weiwei, who was an unpardonably wicked and shocking devil, were definitely people who had the world in their hearts. Even Ning Xuanji's title of immortal was added by someone after he fought against Dugu Weiwei. However, only a few of the higher-ups of the true martial sect knew that Ning Xuanji was also a human and not an immortal. They would not tell others that according to the records of the true martial sect, Ning Xuanji liked to eat dog meat the most when he was still alive. Moreover, although he would not physically punish his disciples when he was teaching them, his words were extremely harsh. He could scold them until they were ashamed. Ning Xuanji, who was said to have the appearance of an immortal and had fought against the great demon Dugu Weiwei, turned out to be an old Taoist who liked to eat dog meat and was harsh with his words. Even if he fought with Dugu Weiwei, it was not for the so-called righteousness of the Jianghu. This kind of thing would ruin people's worldview. Therefore, the true martial sect sealed all the ancient books that recorded Ning Xuanji's previous words and deeds. Only the headmaster and the higher-ups of the true martial sect were qualified to read them. What the people of the Jianghu, including the true martial sect, needed was a perfect immortal Ning Xuanji, who was untainted by dust. Chapter 827. Both the righteous and demonic sects joined forces to break the high heaven sect's array. At the same time, other martial artists came one after another. This made Lu Chonglu and others feel helpless. They had lost the initiative. Even if they seized the time to break the array, it was useless. At this moment, a stream of light flashed, and Kuang Xieyu's figure appeared. He asked everyone he met, "Have you seen Chu Xiao?" In terms of strength, Kuang Xieyou was stronger than Divine Lord Luo. In terms of wit, Kuang Xieyou was also stronger than Divine Lord Luo. However, Kuang Xieyou was temperamental. In normal times, he was indeed stronger than Divine Lord Luo. But when he went crazy, he couldn't care about anything else. For example, Kuang Xieyou had already gone crazy. In his eyes, Chu Xiao was just an ant that was more interesting and worth studying. In the end, he was fooled by this ant, Chu Xiao. How could he swallow this? Therefore, Kuang Xieyou put aside the task of finding the key that Jun Wuxian had instructed him to. He began to question everyone he met if they had seen Chu Xiao. An old Taoist priest of Chunyang Dao sect was asked. He snorted coldly and said, Chu Xiao? If I were to find such a devil, I would definitely be irreconcilable with him. When Cheng Tingshan and others led the way for Kuang Xieyu, he also heard about the grievances between Chu Xiao and some big sects in Jianghu. Many Chunyang Dao sect martial artists died in his hands, so this old Taoist priest should not be lying. He turned his gaze to a real pellet realm martial artist of Gaoping Lu family and asked, "You haven't seen Chu Xiao either?" The real pellet realm martial artist of Gaoping Lu family shook his head quickly and said, "No." Kuang Xieyu's eyes showed a trace of coldness and he asked, "You really haven't seen him?" Being stared at by such a powerful and temperamental guy, the pressure on the martial artist of Gaoping Lu family was not ordinary. He smiled bitterly and said, "Lord of the Elysium, my Lu family has nothing to do with Chu Xiao. Is there a need to hide it for him? I really haven't seen it before." Kuang Xieyue nodded slowly and walked to the other side. She asked Chen Qingdi, "Have you seen Chu Xiao?" Chen Qingdi glanced at him and said faintly, "No." Kuang Xieyue asked suspiciously, "But I seem to have heard that your disciple is good friends with Chu Xiao. Have you really not seen Chu Xiao? Don't let me know that you lied to me. Otherwise I'll be very unhappy. If I'm unhappy, I'll die." Upon hearing this, Chen Qingdi turned around and looked straight at Kuang Xieyue. He said coldly, "What a coincidence. If I'm not happy, people will die too. Do you really think that just because you're called Elysium, you've really become immortals living in the heavens?" He doesn't know what he's doing. How could Chen Qingdi's character be described as overbearing? He had no scruples at all. When he was in West Chu, even the Taoist master's mansion could not control Chen Qingdi. The moon-worshipping cult had never caused trouble for Chen Qingdi. At this moment, even in front of the Elysium Divine General, Chen Qingdi did not give in. A dangerous smile appeared on Kuang Xieyue's lips. "Very well, very well. I haven't stepped into the martial world for so many years. It seems that the people of the martial world have forgotten the dignity of the Elysium. That good-for-nothing Divine Lord Luo has been running around in the martial world for the past few decades. He has lost all the face of the Elysium." Specks of moonlight appeared around Kuang Xieyue's body, but they were mixed with ferocious killing intent. He stared at Chen Qingdi and said coldly, "Do you know what punishment you should receive for offending the dignity of the Elysium?" Everyone present looked at Kuang Xieyue. Whether it was Lu Chonglu from the righteous faction or Sheng Beixian from the demonic faction, they all frowned. A look of disgust appeared in their eyes. As a martial artist, their bodies were unyielding. Their willpower was also unyielding. Who would be willing to have someone high above their heads? Even for the current emperors of the three nations, only the people trained by the imperial court would kneel to them. The rest of the people would at most bow to them. There was indeed a hierarchy in the martial world. It was the law of the jungle. However, everyone still left each other some dignity. The Great Light Temple was one of the leaders of the righteous faction. When their disciples went out, others would respectfully address them as masters. The Great Light Temple would naturally return the greeting. Now that the moon-worshipping cult had become the #1 sect of the demonic faction, the disciples of the evil pole sect would only curry favor with the moon-worshipping cult. They would not bow and scrape and treat themselves as slaves. However, the mentality of the Elysium sect was completely different from theirs. They practically treated the people of the martial world like ants. Asking someone to confess after a few words of quarrel. Forget about Chen Qingdi, if it were anyone else, they would not be able to take it either. Indeed, upon hearing this, a smile immediately appeared on Chen Qingdi's face. The next moment, this smile had already turned into a maniacal laugh. "Ha ha ha. In this world, there is no one who can make me, Chen Qingdi, confess my sins. A group of mysterious guys hiding in the Kunlun mountain, who know what they are doing, dare to be arrogant in front of me? Die." As soon as the voice fell, Chen Qingdi actually took the lead to make a move. With a punch, the breath between heaven and earth was instantly stifled. The next moment, the explosive sound had already come. All the power around seemed to have been sucked away by Chen Qingdi's punch. In their eyes, there was nothing else but the domineering punch of Chen Qingdi. There were no West Chu martial artists among the people present, but they still vaguely knew about the details of Chen Qingdi. He couldn't be regarded as a real pellet state martial artist at all. Which real pellet state martial artist could seriously injure a real fire spirit refinement state martial artist with one punch? The people of Elysium sect didn't know the depth of Chen Qingdi, but with just this punch, no one present except Lu Chonglu and Sheng Beixian was sure to take it. At this time, under Chen Qingdi's punch, Kuang Shiyue's arrogant face changed instantly. This kind of punch, this kind of terrifying fist intent. Is this still the existence of the real pellet state? Kuang Shiyue stretched out his hand fiercely, and the light in the sky seemed to gather in his hand, forming a dazzling moonlight. Picking the moon with one hand, as if he was pinching the moon, Kuang Shiyue smashed directly at Chen Qingdi. The surrounding moonlight vibrated, and the fluctuations made Sheng Beixian and Lu Chongliu's faces change slightly. The Elysium Divine Generals were really not easy to deal with. Kuang Shiyue's strength was even enough to rank in the top 10 of the Fengyan list, and there were 8 like him in the Elysium sect. With this kind of strength, not counting the other disciples and only counting the peak combat power, it was hard to find a sect that was comparable to the Elysium sect in the entire underworld. Chen Qingdi's overbearing punch fell, and collided with Kuang Shiyue, who was pinching the moonlight. In an instant, the fist momentum exploded, and the moonlight melted. Kuang Shiyue and Chen Qingdi took a step back at the same time, but Kuang Shiyue's right hand was trembling slightly. There was a hint of shock in his eyes, and there was even a strong sense of puzzlement. What is going on with Chen Qingdi? How can he have such powerful strength and not step into the real fire spirit refinement state? This doesn't make sense. However, Chen Qingdi did not give Kuang Shiyue any time to think at all. Another earth-shattering punch fell, and the earth seemed to tremble along with his punch. Kuang Shiyue snorted coldly, and the boundless moonlight transformed into a crescent moon saber in his hand. He slashed down with the saber. It was incomparably magnificent, but it also reflected the boundless killing intent. It was as if the space had been cut apart by his saber. However, as Chen Qingdi's punch fell, the saber radiance was shattered. The sharp moonlight saber was no match for Chen Qingdi's pair of iron fists. Kuang Shiyue's face had already turned extremely ugly. He was a divine general of the Elysium sect. The Elysium sect was a supreme existence, and a divine general of the Elysium sect was not allowed to be defeated. Back when Divine Lord Luo was defeated by Chu Kuanga, he had already been mocked by the people of the Elysium sect for decades. Today, if he were to be defeated by a wild person like Chen Qingdi, what awaited him would be the same mockery. In an instant, Kuang Shiyue's eyes turned blood red. His pupils had completely disappeared, and in their place was a blood-red moon in the sky. Moon shadows appeared all around him, but they were blood-red in color and emitted an evil aura. The densely packed moon shadows shrouded Chen Qingdi. From afar, it seemed as if Chen Qingdi's entire body was sealed in that boundless blood moon. Facing this kind of martial arts technique that involved the way of space, Chen Qingdi only had one countermeasure, and that was to punch again. No matter what kind of magical secret technique it was, no matter what kind of martial arts technique it was, he only had one punch, and it was a punch that could penetrate the heavens and the earth. As Chen Qingdi's punches fell, the surrounding moon shadows shattered one after another. Kuang Shiyue seemed to have gone mad. He threw out all kinds of magical secret techniques, as if they were worthless. His martial arts were very different from the current martial arts of the underworld, but they were extremely powerful. However, they were all smashed by Chen Qingdi's punches. Both of them were in a killing frenzy. Every time Chen Qingdi's punch fell, a circle of ripples would ripple in the void. Everything that it passed turned into powder. This was the extreme outbreak of power. Moreover, everyone also discovered that Chen Qingdi's body began to glow with a faint flame. It seemed to be gold, but it also seemed to be silver, which made everyone present feel a little familiar. As Chen Qingdi's punch fell, the flame rippled and became stronger. It made Chen Qingdi look like the demon god in the ancient legend who fought with the world. It was very terrifying. At this time, the old Taoist from Chunyang Dao sect suddenly wondered, why is the flame around Chen Qingdi so similar to the internal force true fire refined in the real pellet state? As soon as this remark came out, everyone present was taken aback. They were all existences of the real pellet state, so they naturally knew what the internal force true fire looked like. At first glance, it was indeed quite similar. However, the internal force true fire condensed from the martial Dao real pellet could also be released. At this time, Lu Chonglu of the real martial sect suddenly thought of something. He said excitedly, I understand. I understand why Chen Qingdi has such a powerful combat power, but he is still not in the real fire spirit refinement state. Amazing talent. Amazing talent. Chen Qingdi took a different path from us. He is the real martial Dao Grand Master. The martial Dao Grand Master, who opened a new path for the martial artists of the underworld. Chapter 828. Lu Chongliu's words attracted the attention of everyone present, and they all looked over with a puzzled look. What exactly did you see? Tell me, old man. Lu Chonglu suppressed his excitement. He looked at Sheng Beixian and said, What is the true fire spiritual refinement realm? Sheng Beixian was taken aback, not knowing why Lu Chonglu asked this. The true fire spiritual refinement realm is the true fire spiritual refinement realm. What else can it be? But thinking so in his heart, Sheng Beixian still answered honestly. After stepping into the real pellet state, using martial Dao true pellet to evolve the internal strength true fire, tempering the spirit, and connecting heaven and earth, this is the true fire spiritual refinement realm. For so many years, everyone has understood it this way, and it is also the way to cultivate. Is there a problem? Lu Chonglu said excitedly. There is no problem, of course there is no problem, but Chen Qingdi, he has taken a different path from us. We evolve the internal strength true fire to temper the spirit and connect heaven and earth. The real pellet state is already the limit of human strength, so we have to use the power of heaven and earth to make the power we can control stronger. But Chen Qingdi is not like that. He did not choose to use the internal strength true fire to temper the spirit and communicate with heaven and earth, but he turned to temper himself. He regarded himself as the heaven and earth. The stronger he tempered himself, the greater his power. At this time, he was no longer the real pellet state, but it was not the true fire spiritual refinement realm either, but a wonderful realm mixed between the two. No wonder Chen Qingdi's fist intent is so powerful, because this is a fist intent that can resist the will of heaven and earth. He believes that he can defeat heaven and earth. Chen Qingdi, Chen Qingdi, unparalleled in the world. Everyone present was shocked, and they looked at Lu Chonglu in astonishment. They never expected that Lu Jianghe would give Chen Qingdi such a high evaluation. Unparalleled in the world. But thinking about it carefully, Chen Qingdi was indeed worthy of such an evaluation. Compared to them, Chen Qingdi was more qualified to be called a martial Dao Grandmaster. Everyone else, including Lu Chonglu and Sheng Beixian, only had their own understanding of martial arts. However, Chen Qingdi had forcefully created his own martial path. Lu Chonglu still said in an excited tone, This path is very unusual. Historically, if a real pellet state martial artist wants to take a step forward and step into the real fire god refinement realm, what they need is not accumulation. On the contrary, their perception is the most important. Therefore, for so many years, how many martial artists, because of their lack of comprehension, even if they had the perseverance to cultivate bitterly, could only accumulate a little bit of inner force and true qi, and could not advance even an inch? However, if one chose Chen Qingdi's method, instead of using the true fire of inner force to refine one's spirit, he would be able to improve himself. And you all have seen the result. Chen Qingdi has succeeded. The power he has shown is not inferior to the existence of the true fire spirit refinement realm, and even far surpasses most martial artists of the same level. Everyone present suddenly felt excited when they heard this. These people were also the leaders or mainstays of some major sects, but they didn't dare to say that they could step into the true fire god refinement realm. But now Emperor Chen Qingdi had paved a different path for them, which meant that they had an extra second of opportunity. However, Sheng Beixian was very calm at this time. He said in a deep voice, That is true, but in fact if you think about it carefully, this path is more difficult than the path we have taken. The first path requires perception, but this second path requires boundless perseverance. This is even more difficult than the former. You all know the feeling of tempering the spirit with the true fire of internal force. It is so painful that you want to die. But as long as you can hold on until your spirit can reach the point where you can touch heaven and earth, it will be fine. Those who have a strong perception and have a certain degree of understanding of this world can actually complete it in a very short time. But what about those like Chen Di, tempering themselves with the true fire of internal force? You can see that his whole body is still burning with the true fire of internal force. God knows how long it took him to take this step. If you want to compare with heaven and earth, you have to bear the powerful pain and price that you can't imagine. Those who can step into the real pellet state, except for those who rely on opportunities or external objects, basically have a certain degree of perception and talent. So for them, choosing the first path is easier than taking the path of Chen Di. Upon hearing this, everyone suddenly calmed down and finally understood. If Chen Di's path was so easy to walk, only Chen Di would not have chosen this path for tens of thousands of years and succeeded alone. Perhaps the path chosen by Chen Di had been taken before, but they found that it was a dead end, so they gave up. But who would have thought that Emperor Chen would be so talented? He actually relied on his own willpower to forcefully walk out of a dead end into a living path. It was not an exaggeration to say that he was unparalleled in the world. Lu Chonglu sighed and said, "Even so, Chen Di has also taken a new path." If the future generation of martial artists really feel hopeless, and they have great perseverance, they can try to take the path of Chen Di. After all, he succeeded. In terms of martial arts, Chen Di is already worthy of the title of Grandmaster. I admire him. Lu Chonglu, the master of the real martial sect, was a good person in the eyes of most people. He had a gentle personality, and his means were not tough, let alone radical. However, there were many martial artists in the underworld who owed Lu Chonglu a favor. He always helped if he could, and he wouldn't force if he couldn't. He would also leave some leeway for others. Coupled with the reputation left by Ning Xuanji in the past, Lu Chonglu's status in the underworld was actually not low. It was not easy for such a person to say the word admire for Chen Di. At this time, Kuang Xieyue and Chen Di were already fighting with all their might. They didn't want to give in to each other. The battle between the two had completely smashed the open space in front of High Heaven Sect. The violent true chi fluctuations around were even enough to seriously injure some weaker real pellet realm martial artists. The madness in Kuang Xieyue's eyes became more intense. He already felt that he had lost the face of Elysium after being forced to such an extent by Chen Di. Kuang Xieyue's body shone with moonlight, and his figure suddenly retreated 1,000 feet. Just when everyone thought he wanted to escape, Kuang Xieyue made a gesture with his hand. A moonlight shone between his eyebrows, and a trace of blood oozed out. In an instant, the blood-colored moonlight shone brightly, shrouding the whole world. Within a radius of more than 10 miles, the sky could no longer be seen. There was only a blood moon in the sky, and in the blood moon, there was a divine figure standing, making a gesture that was exactly the same as the one in Kuang Xieyue's hand. This powerful aura seemed to be able to pierce through the heavens and the earth. Sheng Beixian said with a solemn expression, "Headmaster Lu, the martial arts of the Elysium are very strange. What kind of martial arts do they cultivate?" Lu Chonglu also shook his head with a serious expression and said, "I don't know, but Elysium is not easy to deal with. In the past, Dugu Weiwei was almost invincible in the world, but he was still able to accommodate Elysium living in Kunlun Mountain. It is conceivable that Elysium's background is not that simple. Moreover, Elysium's martial arts are very old, so old that they are close to the ancient martial arts. The development of martial arts is not static, and the ancient martial arts did not have to be stronger than the current martial arts. Over the past 10,000 years, although the current development of martial arts was built on the foundation of the ancient martial arts, it was more suitable for the current environment than the ancient martial arts. It was easier to understand. Even if you were illiterate, even if you were disabled, as long as your meridians were still intact, you could cultivate. But it was also because of this that the current martial arts were more homogenized. It was not like the ancient times, when 100 flowers bloomed and 100 schools of thought contended. There were 3,000 orthodoxies in Taoism, but now, there were no more than 100 of them. The Tianmen lineage inherited the ancient martial way. However, there was no mention of the Tianmen in the ancient records. The origins of the other party were very mysterious. If the 9 great divine generals of Elysium all had this kind of strength, and all of them appeared in the underworld, then the underworld would be in chaos. Sheng Beixian also nodded with a serious expression. It was not that the underworld could not accommodate strong people, but it depended on how the strong person came to be. Yi Xiaonan's reputation was not built in a day. Since he took charge of moon-worshipping cult had slowly climbed to its current status. If the 9 great divine generals of Elysium appeared in the underworld, it would indeed cause chaos in the underworld. At this moment in the field, Kuang Shiyue did something that no one present could have imagined. He actually bowed to the divine figure in the blood moon. And it was the kind of bow where he prostrated himself on the ground. But at this moment, the divine figure in the blood moon actually followed Kuang Shiyue's action, and prostrated himself on the ground towards Chen Di, kowtowing to him. With this movement, the weather between heaven and earth changed, as if the world was collapsing. How could a mortal accept the bow of a god? The moon deity kowtowed and accepted this bow, but the price was Chen Di's life. Chen Di laughed maniacally. What the hell are you talking about? You want to worship me, but you don't have the qualifications. Chen Di's whole body was burning with golden fire. He took a step forward, and in the blink of an eye, an earth dragon turned over, and the earth cracked. As the fist fell, the surrounding space seemed to be compressed to the extreme by this fist, and a loud, silent explosion erupted. The greatest sound is silent. Unparalleled in the world, the fist momentum is invincible. As the fist blasted out, there was even a hazy divine figure in the surrounding void. That was the appearance of Chen Di's fist. In Chen Di's eyes, he did not cultivate heaven and earth, but he cultivated himself. He was his own god. Boom. As the fist momentum fell, the blood moon collapsed, and the moon deity's shadow was torn apart. Traces of black void traces even appeared in the space where the two of them fought. That was the sign that the space was unstable, and was about to be torn apart. Kuang Shiyue spat out a mouthful of blood, and his face was as pale as paper. Looking at the demon-like Chen Di in front of him, there was no longer any contempt or arrogance in his eyes, only disbelief. Chapter 829. The commotion caused by High Heaven Sect's spirit array was so great that many people had already seen it. The battle between Kuang Shiyue and Chen Di was so powerful that even more people had seen it. When Chu Xiu and the others arrived, they happened to see the final exchange between Chen Di and Kuang Shiyue. It was like the heavens were falling and the earth was cracking apart. Even this space mystic domain began to fluctuate. Previously, Black Martial Sect's Pu Yang had said that this space could not withstand the power of a true fire soul refining cultivator. But now, the fight between the two of them had actually caused cracks to appear in this mystic domain. Obviously, the power between the two of them was close to the heaven and earth profound opening realm. Fortunately, the two of them only exchanged one move, otherwise, this mystic domain exploration would have ended early. Seventh young Master Fong clicked his tongue and sighed. That Xie Xiao Lu guy is really lucky, to have such a fierce person as his master, it's scary. Chu Xiu also nodded. Chen Di had finally shown his true strength this time, and the power he displayed was simply terrifying. After the two sides met up, seventh young Master Fong went to find out what was going on. Why were these two people who had nothing to do with each other fighting? The treasure hadn't even appeared yet. After inquiring about it, he learned that these two people were actually fighting because of Chu Xiu. Although the root cause was Kuang Shiyue's arrogance and Chen Di's stubbornness, the fuse of this matter was still Chu Xiu. Feng Qixiao's gaze towards Chu Xiu had changed a little. This was the real scourge, the god of slaughter. Even though he wasn't here, his name alone was enough to cause a bloody battle. Kuang Shiyue naturally saw Chu Xiu, but he just glanced at Chu Xiu and didn't do anything. Kuang Shiyue was just crazy, not stupid. He had just fought with Chen Di and consumed too much energy. If he were to touch Chu Xiu now, did he really think that Wei Shuya and the entire Hidden Devil clan were useless? At this moment, both sides were unable to continue fighting. If they were to continue fighting, then it would be a fight to the death. Moreover, the strength of these two people was a bit too strong. If they continued to fight and something happened to this space, they would be the ones to suffer losses. After a temporary truce, a few true fire spirit refinement realm powerhouses gathered together to discuss how to break the formation. However, no matter how they discussed it, if they wanted to break the formation, they could only rely on everyone working together. High Heaven Sex Spirit Array was simply too vast, so vast that even after tens of thousands of years, even after experiencing an ancient tribulation, it still possessed such power. Therefore, after the discussion of everyone present, everyone attacked a part of the formation. As long as one part was destroyed, they could gradually weaken the power of the spirit array, and finally break it in one fell swoop. During the process of breaking the formation, other martial artists who entered the secret realm also gradually came and joined in. Almost all the martial artists who entered this secret realm finally gathered here. Chu Xiu also saw the old monk from Sabodhi Monastery, Jingchan Jizang. For some reason, the way the old monk looked at Chu Xiu made him feel displeased. He felt a chill run down his spine. Behind him was Sun Zuchang, the old ancestor of the Sun family. The moment he saw Chu Xiu, Sun Zuchang's white hair almost stood up. His eyes were full of anger. He pointed at Chu Xiu and roared, "Chu Xiu, my Sun family will fight you to the death." The Sun family was not like the Ying family of Shangshui. They only had a few real pellet state martial artists, and they were all cultivated by the Sun family to take over the family's power and support the next generation. As a result, in this secret realm, 2 of them were killed by Chu Xiu in a row. This kind of Sun family was absolutely unacceptable to the Sun family. The others looked at Sun Zuchang with a surprised look on their faces. The 9 great families, to be precise, it should be in the entire underworld. The Sun family was famous for its good temper and tolerance. In the beginning, among the 9 great families, the Sun family could only be ranked at the bottom, and they were not particularly strong. Their ancestor was even a real pellet state martial artist, and it was still a relatively weak one. At that time, the Sun clan of Jiangdong was able to be ranked as one of the 9 great clans because the Jianghu was in chaos at that time. There were too many 9 great clans involved, and they really couldn't find anyone, so they used the Sun clan of Jiangdong to make up the numbers. As a result, the Sun clan of River East had relied on this mediocre cultivation method to develop to its current status. It could be said that it was not easy for them to achieve such a status. The Sun family of Jiangdong could be said to be a typical example of making a fortune in silence. Others felt that the Sun family of Jiangdong was a bit useless, but they were better than all of you. But now looking at Sun Zuchang's appearance as if he was going to swallow Chu Xiu alive, what did he do to stimulate Sun Zuchang to this state? When the people around inquired, they found out that this Chu Xiu actually killed 2 real pellet state martial artists, who were the mainstay of the Sun family, and he even used their corpses to break the array. This was a great hatred. No wonder Sun Zuchang was like this. Chu Xiu said lightly, "The 2 disciples of your Sun family were possessed by resentful spirits. I killed them, and then the maze was lifted. Otherwise, everyone would have died there. Now that I've brought everyone out, this hatred has fallen on my head. Are you going to blame me for that? One person dying or a dozen people dying together, isn't it a good choice? The 2 brothers exchanged their lives for us to get out of trouble. We will all remember these 2. Sun Zuchang roared, "Nonsense. Do you think I will believe it?" Those who entered the World Sword sect at that time, maybe someone had some ulterior motives and revealed the matter. Although no one stopped Chu Xiu from killing the Sun brothers at that time, it was also possible that they didn't dare to make a move because of Chu Xiu's power, or they waited until they came out to tell the news to Sun Zuchang in exchange for a favor. Therefore, Sun Zuchang was very clear about what happened in the cave at that time. Chu Xiu stood with his hands behind his back and said lightly, "It's up to you whether you believe it or not. Anyway, I Chu Xiu have a clear conscience, and I am not afraid of being slandered by others." As soon as these words came out, the way others looked at Chu Xiu changed a little, saying that he had a clear conscience with such righteous words. How thick is your skin, Chu Xiu? This is a bit disgusting. Wei Shuya coughed and said, "How can there be no death in the ruins battle? Sun Zuchang, when you brought your Sun family disciples here, you should have this awareness." Chu Xiu was a member of their Yinma clan. Although Wei Shuya knew that Chu Xiu deliberately killed them, if he didn't protect them at this time, would he be afraid of the Jiangdong Sun family? Yu Moya, who was also a true fire spirit refinement state powerhouse of the Yinma clan, also laughed strangely and said, "Old Sun, it's just the death of two real pellet state martial artists. Anyway, if your Sun family can bear it, you will be able to bear it for a few years." Sun Zuchang was trembling with anger, but now everyone was studying the matter of breaking the array. Was it worth it to fight with the Yinma clan for this little grudge of the Sun family? Obviously, it was not worth it, so no one stood up for the Sun family at this time. Sun Zuchang could only bear it, snorted coldly, and walked aside. When others saw Sun Zuchang's appearance, they couldn't help but shake their heads. Face was fought for by oneself. If you don't live up to expectations, then you can't blame others. All day long he always wanted to keep a low profile and endure. If there was a matter, others would take the lead first, and he would hide behind to add insult to injury. This was indeed safe, but he couldn't stand the storm. Just like the battle between Chen Qingdi and Kuang Shiyue just now. Even if the opponent was Kuang Shiyue of Elysium, as long as he dared to be arrogant in front of Chen Qingdi would still dare to attack him and throw a heavy punch. It was likely that if Sun Zuchang were in his shoes, he would definitely choose to give in and swallow his anger. Sun Zuchang temporarily gave in, and everyone began to work together to break the spirit array, but it took them a full day to open it. It was easy to imagine the strength of High Heaven Sect's spirit array. When the gates of High Heaven Sect were pushed open, a dazzling light bloomed, blinding everyone present. Looking around, there was only shock and awe. The entire High Heaven Sect's main hall was white, and whether it was the ground or the surroundings, everything was paved with a white jade-like material. Directly in front of the main hall was a giant statue more than 1,000 meters tall. This giant statue was dressed in battle armor, and had a crimson cloak draped over its shoulders. Ferocious beasts worshipped it, and even dragons had to submit to it. It was just that the appearance of the giant statue was blank, but it gave people even more room for imagination. Is this the ancestral founder of High Heaven Sect? Sure enough, he's quite domineering. Feng Qishao muttered in a low voice, but it attracted angry glares from everyone, which made him dare not speak again. Everyone looked around the main hall of High Heaven Sect, feeling that something was wrong. This place was different from the ruins they had been to before. It was clean, too clean. The white jade-like ground was spotless, as if there was still a spirit array operating underground, guarding this place at all times. Moreover, the things placed around it were extremely neat. It seemed that when the people of High Heaven Sect withdrew from here, they did not panic at all. Everything was in an orderly manner, and they had even packed up their things. Compared to other sects that were in a panic during the Great Ancient Calamity, High Heaven Sect was calm enough. At this moment, Chu Xiu thought of the meeting notes he had found before. The so-called heaven-splitting plan, or rather the plan to deal with the Great Ancient Calamity, should have been a success. Those who agreed to the heaven-splitting plan, like High Heaven Sect and Three Pure Temple, were one of the leaders, so they all seemed very relaxed and indifferent. As for the others, that was not necessarily the case. For example, only 2 people from Spirit Treasure Temple were qualified to leave. According to Feng Qishao, the Sword Sect of the world should be one of the top sects in the ancient times, but only 1/10 of its disciples could leave. Looking at the appearance of High Heaven Sect, it could not be that all the disciples had left, right? Just as everyone was still thinking about it, the entire main hall shone brightly with spirit array light, and a voice suddenly rang out. Chapter 830. The radiance of the spirit array in the main hall suddenly activated, which startled everyone present, for fear that they had triggered some kind of killing array. Although the possibility of a killing array being set up in their own main hall was very low, who knew what these great ancient sects were thinking? The giant statue in the middle suddenly burst into light, and a low voice slowly sounded. How many years has it been? I didn't expect that someone from the outside world would really survive the great ancient tribulation. and come to my high heaven sect." Inside the giant statue in the middle, a figure emerged from the radiance of the spirit array, but his face could not be seen clearly, and even his aura was extremely faint. Looking at the crowd below, the figure laughed in a low voice and said, "No matter how many years have passed, being able to come to the illusory void boundary is your ability. Being able to break my high heaven sect's spirit array is also your ability." Sir Sect Master was merciful and didn't want to take everything away, so he left some good things for you, which can be regarded as a blessing to future generations. Everyone present didn't show the slightest expression. They were not surprised by the arrangements left by High Heaven Sect in the past. In fact, there were only 3 types of ruins discovered over the years. One was the ruins left by the Righteous Path sects. It had to be said that these Righteous Path sects were relatively kind. Even if they left, they would leave a part of their things in the sect, and they didn't set up too many traps, which was equivalent to benefiting future generations or leaving behind an inheritance for themselves. Just like the branch of the 3 Pure Temple that Chu Xiu encountered in the small mortal heaven before. That person was very generous and directly left behind an extremely precious Dao accumulation. Of course, compared with the Righteous Path sects, the Devil Path sects seemed a bit vicious and unkind. All Devil Path ruins must be full of traps, spirit arrays, or some other insidious and evil means. For people from the Devil Path, even if they couldn't take away their own things, why should they leave them for future generations? Could they still count on them to care about their own good? Of course, there was a third type, which was the kind where the owner left in a hurry and left nothing behind. This kind completely depended on luck. If one was lucky, they could get many things without any trouble. If one was unlucky, who knew what kind of evil things those great ancient sects had left behind? Now it seemed that High Heaven Sect, as an ancient sect, should be the first type, which made everyone present feel a lot more relaxed. If there were enough things, they could even avoid a fight and split the spoils evenly. But at that moment, the figure suddenly changed the subject and said, "However, the things of my High Heaven Sect are not so easily taken." Weak waste. Forget about taking things from my High Heaven Sect. You aren't even qualified to step into my High Heaven Sect's main hall. If he wanted treasures, he could. In the main hall in front of him, there was something left behind by the sect master himself. There was even a key that could lead to the heavens. Only the strong are qualified to obtain these things. Many of you will die here, so remember, without enough blood, the gates of my High Heaven Sect will not open again. As soon as the figure's voice fell, the gate of High Heaven Sect rumbled and was completely locked. The radiance of the spirit array enveloped the entire hall, causing everyone's expression to change dramatically. Du Guli swept his sword towards the figure and said coldly, "Stop trying to play tricks. You are just a small soul clone that was deposited in a spirit array. 10,000 years have passed and your body has already turned to ashes, so what are you still acting so arrogantly for?" The faces of everyone present also turned a little ugly. Originally, they thought that this High Heaven Sect would give them this opportunity for free, but they did not expect that this High Heaven Sect was actually trying to raise them. If this kind of thing had happened to other cultivators, it would have been fine, but most of them were leaders of their own families or sects, so they would not be so short-sighted. Just because a remnant soul clone spouted some nonsense, they would fall into disarray and fight amongst themselves. The figure laughed and said, "That's right, I'm only a divine avatar. Unfortunately, it's hard to say how many of you will be able to survive. There are countless slaughters in this world, and humans and fierce beasts are actually the same. The weak are prey to the strong." As soon as the last sentence was said, the tone of the figure suddenly became gloomy. "There are no wastes in my High Heaven Sect, and those who obtain my High Heaven Sect's inheritance should not be wastes. The thing is inside, and if you do not shed enough blood, not only will you not be able to obtain it, you will also be trapped here forever. You can try to break the spirit array, but my High Heaven Sect's spirit array was personally arranged by the sect master of 4 Symbols Divine Sect. Only the strong are qualified to set foot on this earth. The weak are not worthy to exist in this world." As soon as the figure's voice fell, his whole body dissipated, but the spirit array in the entire hall had already begun to operate. Everyone present even felt like cursing at this moment. This High Heaven Sect was simply a lunatic, even worse than the demon path. How could they not be allowed to live if they were weak? Chushio did not find it strange at all. For a sect to be able to become one of the top sects in the ancient times, they would definitely have their own perseverance. Even though these perseverance might seem like lunatics in the eyes of others and were extremely stubborn, the disciples that were nurtured under this stubbornness were simply terrifying. This group of people from High Heaven sect had resorted to such methods just to leave behind some treasures and inheritances. It was easy to imagine just how cruel the competition within High Heaven sect was in ancient times. Those who could stand out from the crowd had to be extremely tenacious and ruthless. Although such a sect was bloody and cruel, there was no need to worry about it declining. Just as the figure said, although there was still morality and all kinds of good people in this world. In fact, if one were to disregard all of this, it was nothing more than the law of the jungle. High Heaven sect understood these 4 words to the extreme and evolved them into this kind of bigotry. Of course, for Chushio and the others who came later, they were out of luck. Of course, they had heard of the 4 Symbols Divine sect, and Butian Nam was very familiar with it. It was a top sect in ancient times, but for some reason, it didn't survive the great calamity of ancient times. However, even the people who obtained the inheritance of the 4 Symbols Divine sect later could form the 4 top sects in the world today. One could imagine how strong the 4 Symbols Divine sect was in the past. The Black Tortoise sect was best at all kinds of puppet mechanisms and spirit arrays. Now they were facing a spirit array laid down by the sect master of the 4 Symbols Divine sect in ancient times. They didn't even dare to imagine how powerful it was. At this moment, everything around them began to change under the operation of the spirit array. The ground under their feet was falling, and they were about to fall into the ground. Du Gu Li and the others attacked with all their strength, but just as the figure said, this level of spirit array was not something they could break with their strength. It might be possible if it was a heaven and earth profound understanding realm master. After they fell to the ground, huge caverns appeared all around them. The radiance of the spirit array shone in each of the caverns, and at the same time, it illuminated the things inside. Among them, there were weapons that were still shining with cold sharpness. They shone with spirituality under the support of the spirit array. Even after tens of thousands of years, the weapon spirits had not dissipated. Cheng Tingshan stared blankly at the 2 longswords among the weapons and murmured, "That's Graceful Swan, ranked 35th in the famous sword manual. There's also Profound Heaven, ranked 28th in the famous sword manual." The martial artists of Hidden Sword Mountain Villa were very familiar with the famous swords in the world, be it in the current world or the legendary ones. These 2 swords were divine swords listed in the famous sword manual. Moreover, there were other weapons in the caverns, and by the looks of it, they were also divine weapons. Not only were there divine weapons, but there were also bottles of pills in the caverns. They had names and annotations on them, and the weakest was at least rank 8. Because of the protection of the spirit array, there was no need to worry about them rotting. In addition to weapons and elixirs, there were also precious refining materials, cultivation methods, rare treasures, and so on. Any one of these things, if placed in the outside world, would cause a lot of people to compete for them, but now they were all gathered here. This kind of scene was enough to make most of the people present jealous. And among these treasures, the most conspicuous one was a stone-like object with extremely complex patterns engraved on it. Was this the Heaven Ascension key that the High Heaven sect master had mentioned? The moment he saw the key, Kuang Xieyu's eyes lit up. The key really was in these ruins. At the same time, Kuang Xieyu cursed in his heart. This High Heaven sect was really crazy. Since they had already left, why did they still leave these troublesome things behind? As a result, he had to make another trip and had lost face twice in a row. Considering all this, Kuang Xieyu's gaze faintly shifted towards Chu Xiu and Chen Qingdi with a hint of gloominess. At this time, the other cultivators present all had different looks on their faces, and the scene fell into an awkward situation. They were all sensible people, so naturally, they would not start killing each other as the High Heaven sect's soul clone had said. The strong preyed on the weak, but they were not fierce beasts but rational people. But the problem was that these things were too tempting, and High Heaven sect was generous enough to leave behind so many treasures. With so many treasures in front of them, how many people could maintain their rationality? In particular, they knew that they could not get out right now, and if they did not shed enough blood, they would be trapped here for the rest of their lives. Under these conditions, especially under the premise that they all had ulterior motives, it was quite difficult for everyone to work together to break the spirit array. At this time, Suyin took the lead to stand up and say, "Everyone." But before he could finish speaking, the radiance of the spirit array suddenly blossomed, and inside the spirit array, blades of light slashed towards everyone. At the same time, a mechanical mechanism activated in front of the cavern, and a number of armored humanoid puppets emerged and charged towards everyone. Chapter 831. These means of High Heaven sect were vicious, one after another. It was clear that they were forcing everyone present to take action. The light blades in the spirit array were like knives. Even a real pellet realm martial artist would have a hard time facing them, and could only dodge. Moreover, those mechanical puppets had a powerful aura, and their whole body was made of top-grade materials. Although they were not so flexible, it would still take some effort even for a real fire spirit refinement realm powerhouse to defeat them. Everyone was forced into a corner, and had no choice but to charge forward, resisting the formation while dealing with the puppets. In the battle just now, the most dazzling performance was Ing Sanshu of the Ing clan. Chu Xiu and other junior martial artists had never heard of Ing Sanshu's name, let alone seen Ing Sanshu fight. But after they saw it, Chu Xiu and others understood why Ing Sanshu was qualified to be ranked first on the Feng Yun list. Although the offensive power of those puppets was not strong, their defensive power was extremely amazing, and their whole body was made of materials used to forge divine weapons. But Ing Sanshu's attack was like the sky was collapsing. Black aura chi shone around him, and a black dragon roared. The black aura chi turned into a black dragon that hovered behind him, and there was even a vague charm of the dragon clan in it. With a claw, the dragon's claw tore everything in front of it apart, and caught a puppet in its hand. The other hand formed a fist seal, and with a loud bang, the puppet's body shone with the brilliance of the spirit array. The spirit array in it had obviously been destroyed. However, Ing Sanshu did not stop there. His punches rained down one after another. Everyone watched as the metal puppet, which had appeared to be incomparably awe-inspiring just a moment ago, was now crushed into a lump of scrap metal. Ing Sanshu directly kept it in his pocket. Looking at Ing Bailu on the side, Ing Sanshu said lightly, "These puppets are all materials used to forge divine weapons. They are strong and sharp, and can be used to forge weapons in the future. They are very precious, don't waste them. Since the rise of my Ing clan, we have been treading on thin ice. We can't make the slightest mistake, and we can't let go of any small benefits. As the future patriarch, you need to know the principle of being diligent and thrifty." Ing Bailu nodded with a serious expression. In the Ing clan of Shangshui, Ing Sanshu's status was even higher than his father's. He was the current head of the Ing clan. However, Ing Sanshu's ambition did not lie in this, so he focused on martial arts. He did not interfere with the businesses of the Shangshui Ing clan, or the clan's affairs. The corners of everyone's mouths twitched. A material that could be used to forge a divine weapon was crushed like scrap metal in Ing Sanshu's hands. How could this be called sturdy? Just how strong was this guy? Moreover, in such a tense situation, Ing Sanshu was actually lecturing Ing Bailu on what it meant to be diligent and thrifty. No matter how one looked at it, such a scene did not seem right. However, right at this moment, the array formation in front of one of the caves suddenly disappeared. Ing Sanshu waved his hand, and his gang chi directly swept out bottles of medicinal pills from within. Seeing this scene, everyone instantly understood what was going on. The array formation that controlled the mechanical puppets was one with the array formation in front of the cave where the treasures were hidden. As long as he could deal with these mechanical puppets, he would be able to obtain the treasures inside. Although everyone present still didn't know how they should leave this place, it was better to get the treasures first. Lu Fengxian and Mei Qinglian stood beside Chu Xiu. In this kind of place, especially in the face of these puppets with extremely abnormal defense, they could only join forces to deal with the enemy. Although these mechanical puppets were vulnerable in the hands of Ing Sanshu, if they were placed in front of other real pellet state martial artists, even Chu Xiu was not sure that he could defeat them in a short time. Which one should we deal with first? Lu Fengxian asked. Chu Xiu squinted his eyes and thought for a while. Let's find the puppets with elixirs in the previous caves. What we lack most should be these things. Although these puppets were now in a mess, they were refined by the people of the Four Symbols Divine sect in the past, and they were not the work of the same person, so there were great differences in subtle places. The memory of everyone present was not bad. As long as they saw it, they could now recall that they had appeared in front of those caves before. For the current Chu Xiu trio, what the three of them lacked the most was elixirs. Chu Xiu didn't lack weapons, but what he lacked were some best quality elixirs for cultivation. Although the divine Dr. Feng Buping was now under him, Feng Buping was only good at medical skills. Although he could also refine elixirs, he could only refine some healing elixirs. The elixirs for assisting cultivation were all extorted by Chu Xiu from the major martial arts forces in northern Yan as protection fees. Although the number was huge, there were no best quality elixirs. Mei Qinglian was even worse. She was the only one in her Yin demon sect, so when she was in the Guanzhong torture room, she didn't even have many elixirs. It wasn't until she followed Chu Xiu that Mei Qinglian used the power of the Jinwu Hall to plunder a lot of good things. Of course, these things were useful to Chu Xiu, but not to Lu Fengxian. His luck was amazing. After fusing with LV1Ho's primordial spirit fragment, the bottlenecks of various realms were extremely low. Even if he didn't have elixirs, his cultivation speed was not slow with his talent. However, since Chu Xiu needed elixirs, he just had to cooperate. The destructive power of the three of them, Chu Xiu, Lu Fengxian, and Mei Qinglian, was huge. Mei Qinglian's beauty technique was originally only useful against humans, and it was useless against these mechanical puppets without any spiritual intelligence. However, Mei Qinglian's movement technique could be said to be the best among the three. In terms of unpredictability, even Chu Xiu's fast and slow 9 words formula could not be compared to it. Therefore, Mei Qinglian directly attracted the attention of those puppets, and then Chu Xiu used his powerful spiritual qi and various martial arts techniques to control them. Finally, Lu Fengxian struck and smashed the mechanical puppet into a pile of scrap iron. These mechanical puppets were indeed very hard, but no matter how hard they could not win against the unparalleled heavenly weapon. Together with Lu Fengxian's unparalleled strength, the three of them combined their destructive power against these mechanical puppets was not inferior to that of other experts in the true fire spirit refinement realm. In a short period of time, the three of them worked together to deal with 2 puppets, which made everyone jealous. In such a fierce battle, almost all the puppets were killed, and the things in the cave were also about to be taken away. But at this moment, something happened. The power of the entire formation increased by a notch, and countless extremely sharp light blades rose from it. Like a grid, it shrunk and separated everyone, and it was still slowly shrinking. Chu Xiu was caught off guard, and was separated from LV Fengxian and Mei Qinglian. He glanced at his surroundings and couldn't help but curse his bad luck. Things like formations were not absolutely uniform. The place where he was just now was the center of the entire formation, and there were light blades attacking from all directions, and the pressure was the greatest. He was directly isolated here, and if he was not careful, he would be the first to die. At this moment, Chu Xiu suddenly had a feeling that things like luck were really quite important. It was also a dangerous scene, but LV Fengxian had obtained a large amount of spiritual energy after a nap, creating a fateful encounter. If it was him, he would be surrounded by killing intent. The difference in treatment was not small at all. Others obviously also noticed Chu Xiu's situation. Wei Shuya frowned slightly. He was going to solve the puppets in front of him first, then break the formation barrier to rescue him. Although Chu Xiu was at the center of the formation, he was still far away from the light blades, so there was no danger for a while. For the powerhouse of real fire spirit refinement state, they could break the barrier formed by these formations in a short time if they went all out. However, at this time the closest to Chu Xiu was Sun Zuchang, the ancestor of the Sun family of Jiangdong. He looked at Chu Xiu with a gloomy murderous intent. Chu Xiu killed 2 real pellet state martial artists of the Sun family of Jiangdong. If he didn't kill Chu Xiu, he wouldn't be able to calm down. At present, everyone around was separated by the formation. Even if Wei Shiya wanted to save Chu Xiu, he needed to break several formation barriers. Chu Xiu was already alone, so it was a good time to kill him. But Sun Zuchang made up his mind several times, and his eyes flashed with murderous intent, but he didn't make a move in the end. The outsider's evaluation was right. The way the Sun family of Jiangdong did things was called low-key and forbearing, but to put it bluntly, it was cowardly and had too many concerns. It was easy to kill Chu Xiu, but in the future, the Sun family of Jiangdong and the Yinma clan would form an irreconcilable feud. He was not ready to fight with the Yinma clan yet. If he really killed Chu Xiu, would the Sun family of Jiangdong face the revenge of the Yinma clan in the future? Would the other righteous sects of Eastern Qi choose to help the Sun family? These were all unknown things. Sun Zuchang thought too much and had too many concerns, so after thinking about it, he didn't have the courage to make a move in the end. Just as Duguli had said, Sun Zuchang was a very crafty person. He was faster than anyone when it came to adding insult to injury. However, once he took the lead, he became hesitant. Just when Sun Zuchang had let go of his murderous intent, an even deeper murderous intent erupted beside him, along with a powerful fluctuation of power. Beside Sun Zuchang, the true fire refinement state monk of the Sabodi monastery, Jingchan Jizong, made a lotus seal and stepped out. A golden lotus appeared under his feet. The golden lotus seemed to grow in the void. As Jingchan Jizong stepped out, the golden lotuses bloomed one after another, allowing Jingchan Jizong to cross the formation barrier without any hindrance and come to the center where Chu Xiu was. He chanted Buddhist mantras, and countless golden swastikas condensed in the void. With the power to suppress demons, they surged toward Chu Xiu. At the same time, a staff that seemed to be made of colored glass appeared in his hand. With a scorching Buddhist light, it smashed toward Chu Xiu. In an instant, the golden light illuminated the entire space. Chapter 832. Sun Zuchang hesitated for a long time and did not attack Chu Xiu. However, Jingchan Jizong suddenly attacked Chu Xiu. This was something that no one had expected. Chu Xiu had offended many people in the pugilistic world. To be precise, there were not many forces that Chu Xiu had not offended. Therefore, among the people present, Sun Zuchang could attack Chu Xiu, Butiannan, and Kuang Shiyue. However, no one had expected Jingchan Jizong of Sabodi Zen Monastery to attack. As far as they knew, Chu Xiu did not seem to have any enmity with the eminent monks of Sabodi Zen Monastery. Furthermore, it had been a long time since anyone from Sabodi Zen Monastery had come to the Central Plains warriors. What was going on? Not to mention that they didn't know what was going on. Even Chu Xiu didn't know what was going on. Before entering the mystic realm, he had sensed Jingchan Jizang's killing intent toward him. At that time, Chu Xiu had been puzzled. He had not expected Jingchan Jizang to actually attack him. Furthermore, Chu Xiu could clearly sense that the other party was aiming for his life. Blood qi erupted from Chu Xiu's body as the great blood shadow technique scattered. Countless blood shadows helped Chu Xiu block the swastikas. However, the power of the swastikas was too great. Furthermore, the heat was like magma, directly evaporating the blood shadows. Taking advantage of this opportunity, the heavenly demon dance in Chu Xiu's hand emitted a loud wail of hungry ghosts. The demonic aura around Chu Xiu was raised to the extreme as he slashed at the staff in Jingchan Jizang's hand. There was a loud bang as the demonic aura dissipated. Chu Xiu was sent flying by this blow, and almost crashed into the array barrier behind him. The light blades on it flashed. It would definitely not feel good if he were to crash into them. Chu Xiu looked at Jingchan with a gloomy expression. The strength of this true fire spirit refinement realm expert from the Sabodi monastery was simply unfathomable. It was far from what people like Fang Jinwu and Yuan Tianfang could compare with. Although the monks of Sabodi monastery were extremely low-key, and they didn't even go out of the southern barbarian land when they were free, but as long as they could come out of Sabodi monastery, there was no mediocre person. At this moment, the surrounding people all sucked in a breath of cold air. Jingchan was really going for the kill. In his hand was one of the divine armaments of the Sabodhi monastery, the 7 treasures glazed staff. Using such a powerful top-grade magic weapon to deal with a junior, who was weaker than him, was simply putting Chu Xiu to death. At that moment Wei Shuya roared, "Jingchan! If you dare kill a member of the Yinma lineage, I can guarantee that from now on, as long as anyone from your Sabodhi monastery takes a step out of the southern barbarian land, I will kill them until they don't dare to step out of Sabodhi monastery." Chu Xiu was the publicly acknowledged successor of the Yinma lineage. Wei Shuya knew Chu Xiu's potential better than anyone else. Losing Chu Xiu was not just losing a talented junior, but the future of the entire Yinma lineage. However, Jingchan was expressionless. There was only deep killing intent in his eyes. The 7 treasures glazed staff in his hand emitted a 7-colored brilliance. As it smashed at Chu Xiu, he chanted the Buddhist scriptures. The scriptures poured into Chu Xiu's mind. Every word was like a sledgehammer that struck Chu Xiu's heart, making him feel dizzy as though he was about to vomit blood. Jingchan Kongdu did not take Wei Shuya's threat to heart. It should be said that no one could stop him from killing Chu Xiu today. In fact, Jingchan Kongdu had no grudge with Chu Xiu. They had never even met before. Jingchan Kongdu had only vaguely heard of his name. He was extremely famous among the younger generation, and he even vaguely surpassed Celestial Master Manner's young Celestial Master Zhang Qingxin. The person who had truly made Jingchan Kongdu decide to kill Chu Xiu was the Sabodhi Monastery's divination grandmaster, Tenzin's supremacy, Xiaomok, who had cultivated one of the Buddhist sect's 6 divine powers, the heavenly eye. Although there were very few people in the world who could be considered masters of divination, there were still a few. For example, Chu Xiu's subordinate, Master Yuanji. However, there were only a handful of people who could be considered grandmasters. The Great Radiance Monastery's Karma Zen Hall's Master Su Jing was one, and so was Xiaomok. Furthermore, compared to Su Jing, Xiaomok's experiences were even more legendary. It was said that Xiaomok was born in a small tribe in the southern wilderness. He was the son of the local tribe's leader. Although he could not compare to the descendants of the Central Plains aristocratic families, he lived a prosperous and happy life. Before the age of 20, Xiaomok had never known what sorrow was. However, after he was 20, the small tribe he was in was destroyed by an outsider. The reason was that his mother's former lover had come looking for him and wanted to snatch back his former lover. Furthermore, his mother had acted as a spy, causing the tribe to be destroyed. The entire tribe had been slaughtered, and one of the murderers was his mother. This was a devastating blow to Xiaomok. After escaping, Xiaomok practiced martial arts and went back to take revenge. Although his mother had stopped him from killing his enemy, his mother had committed suicide for love. Therefore, it was equivalent to him indirectly forcing his own mother to commit suicide. Under this kind of human tragedy, Xiaomok completely went crazy and became a murderer who brought disaster to the southern barbaric land. He killed countless people, but because he fell in love with a woman, he was willing to give up his martial arts, let go of everything, and wanted to start all over again. However, he later discovered that his lover was actually the daughter of his enemy and his mother. When he was taking revenge, she was in the Central Plains, so she escaped. She was actually his half-sister. Furthermore, his lover also knew about this. In her despair, she wanted to kill Xiaomok, but she could not bear to do it. In the end, she committed suicide. Feeling disheartened, Xiaomok shattered his own heart meridian and threw himself into the Hungluo River in the southern wilderness. However, because he was still alive, he was saved by the divine monk, Rama of Sabodhi Monastery. After being enlightened, he entered Sabodhi Monastery to cultivate, cut off his past, and forgive his sins. Perhaps it had something to do with Xiaomok's past, but Xiaomok's attainments in the way of karma seemed to have improved by leaps and bounds. He had become a monk halfway through his life, and had even died once, injuring his vitality. But even so, within 10 years, he had become the martial artist with the highest attainments in the way of divination in the entire Sabodhi monastery. Even the divine monk Rama could not compare to him. When Yi Xiaonan entered Sabodhi monastery, Rama was defeated by Yi Xiaonan and immediately went into seclusion. This made many monks in Subodhi Monastery very worried. Subodhi Monastery was located in a corner of the southern wilderness. There were not many disciples, and there were not many things to deal with. Therefore, it was normal for the abbot to go into seclusion for several years, or even more than 10 years. But now, the demonic path was showing signs of rising, which made the monks of Subodhi Monastery extremely anxious. Jingchan Jizong was the oldest monk in Subodhi Monastery. He regarded the safety of the sect above his own life. Therefore, he asked Xiao Mok for divination in front of the sect. In order to repay the kindness of the past, Xiao Mok consumed 100 years of his lifespan to divine the future of Subodhi Monastery. He wanted to see if Yi Xiaonan would be a great enemy of Subodhi Monastery. However, the result he saw was something that even he could not believe. He did not see Yi Xiaonan. What he saw was the scene of Subodhi Monastery being destroyed in the hands of Chu Xiu. At that time, Xiao Mok did not even know Chu Xiu. He only drew Chu Xiu's appearance in his divination, and gave it to the person in charge of wind-sweeping building in the southern wilderness to see. He immediately confirmed that this person was Chu Xiu. At the same time, he told him the news of Chu Xiu. The successor of the Yinma lineage was famous in Jianghu. Although he was young, he already had the attitude of a demonic Tao overlord. Once such a person was allowed to grow, he might become an existence even more terrifying than Yi Xiaonan. If Subodhi Monastery had any conflict with him in the future, or if the abbot met with an accident, Subodhi Monastery's strength would plummet. It was not impossible for it to be destroyed in the hands of the other party. Jingchan Jizong did not doubt the authenticity of Xiao Mok's divination. After all, he was a divination grandmaster, who could stand shoulder to shoulder with the head of the Karma Zen Hall, Su Jing. He had spent 100 years of his lifespan to divine a trace of the heavenly secret. Even if a martial artist reached the true fire spirit refinement realm, they only had a lifespan of 400 years. Because Xiao Mok had damaged his vitality, his lifespan had been cut in half. He only had 200 years left. Although he was not 100 years old this year, losing 100 years of lifespan was equivalent to losing more than half of his lifespan. How could the result of paying such a price be wrong? Therefore, after struggling for a period of time, Jingchan Jizong made a decision. He would kill Chu Xiu in advance to eliminate any future troubles for Subodhi Monastery. He knew the power behind Chu Xiu and knew the trouble that killing Chu Xiu would bring. However, he was already old. There was only so much he could do for the monastery. He had already made up his mind. After killing Chu Xiu, he would take responsibility for everything. If the Yinma lineage wanted an explanation, then his life would be the explanation. Taking his life was enough to extinguish the anger of the Yinma lineage. At least now that the Yinma lineage was divided, they would not fight to the death with Subodhi Monastery for a dead person. At most, they would care about Wei Shuya. However, if there was only Wei Shuya, with Subodhi Monastery's strength, they were not afraid at all. Before taking action, Jingchan Jizong had already made all the preparations. He would sacrifice himself to eliminate a future enemy for Subodhi Monastery. It could also be considered as getting rid of a scourge in the pugilistic world. All these years, Subodhi Monastery had been able to survive for tens of thousands of years without declining because of people like him who were not afraid of sacrifice. Thinking of this, the Buddhist light on the 7-treasure glazed staff in Jingchan Jizang's hand became even stronger. At this moment, Chu Xiu did not know that Jingchan Jizong wanted to kill him for such a groundless reason. He only felt that coming to this mystic realm this time was a mistake, because the people he had met were all lunatics. Kuang Shiyue was a lunatic, Butianan was a lunatic, and this old monk who did not understand the situation and attacked immediately was also a lunatic. Chapter 833. Jingchan Ji had hidden his killer move, but Chu Xiu did not want to die in such an inexplicable way. Moreover, he never had the habit of waiting to be captured. It was the same whether he was facing someone at the true fire spirit refinement realm, or the heaven and earth elemental enlightenment realm. Chu Xiu pushed the power of the mental demon rotation technique to the extreme as he resisted Jingchan Jizang's Buddhist voice attack with all his might. At the same time, a powerful aura erupted from the heavenly demon dance in Chu Xiu's hand. As the saber slashed down, the surrounding space seemed to tremble. The saber's momentum was like a vast sea wave, engulfing everything. 7 limits sea breaking. The overbearing and powerful sea breaking saber slashed out and collided with the 7 treasures glazed staff. A powerful force erupted between the two. Once again, Chu Xiu was blasted away. This time, even his hand holding the saber trembled. As an ascetic monk from the Sabodhi monastery, he had begun to hone his perseverance and willpower when he was young. Those who had the qualifications to step out of the southern wilderness and roam the martial world were not easy to deal with. As a monk of the older generation, Jingchan Jizong wanted to get rid of Chu Xiu for the future of the monastery, even though he was old. For the sake of the sect's grand plan, his strength had increased to its peak, and was even stronger. As for the others, their reactions were different when they saw Chu Xiu being attacked by Jingchan Jizong. The 4 true fire spirit refinement realm experts of the hidden devil lineage immediately wanted to stop Jingchan Jizong, when they saw that he had no intention of stopping. Regardless of how they felt about Chu Xiu, they were all here and represented the interests of the entire hidden devil lineage. Chu Xiu was the successor of the hidden devil lineage, but he was being attacked and killed here. What was going on? If they stood by and did nothing, not only would they ruin the reputation of the hidden devil lineage, but they would also not be able to explain themselves. Therefore, the 4 of them immediately broke through the array barrier and prepared to rescue Chu Xiu. However, Bu Tiannan sneered and stood in front of Wei Shuya. Wei Shuya's face darkened. Bu Tiannan, you are courting death. Bu Tiannan lightly said. Elder Wei, it's not that I don't want to give you face, but Chu Xiu didn't give me face first. Wasn't he, Chu Xiu, arrogant? In that case, it would be best for the others not to interfere. I would like to see if the monks of the Sabodhi monastery can kill this brat. Wei Shuya snorted coldly. Without saying a word, he started to fight with Bu Tiannan. Now that the situation was critical, he didn't have time to talk nonsense. Seeing Bu Tiannan's attack, Sun Zuchong's eyes revealed a hint of ruthlessness. Previously, he didn't dare to make a move on Chu Xiu because he was worried about the hidden devil clan. But now someone had already made the first move to kill him. If he still hesitated, then he would truly be letting down Sun Qifan and Sun Qili. Therefore he stood in front of Cave Lord Ghost Dragon, Wu Ma Sha. Moreover, Sun Zuchong was not the only one who made a move. The Gaoping Lu family's ancestor was also here. He directly stopped Earth Devil magician Yu Moya. Actually, the Gaoping Lu family did not have any enmity with Chu Xiu. However, when he heard that Chu Xiu had killed the Sun brothers, he couldn't help but be vigilant. Previously, there were also 2 Lu family's martial artists who brought Kuang Xieyue to cause trouble for Chu Xiu. The Lu family's ancestor was very decisive in his actions. After discovering the hidden enmity between him and Chu Xiu, and looking at Chu Xiu's current miserable state, he didn't mind hitting him when he was down. There was one last person from the hidden devil clan, Qin Chaoxian from the Scarlet Demonic sect. The one who stopped him was the head of the 6 spiritual masters of the Chunyang Dao sect, Zhang Yunzi. Chu Xiu had killed several martial arts grandmasters from the Chunyang Dao sect. It was time to settle the score. Lu Fengxian, Mei Qinglian, and the others who stood on Chu Xiu's side were secretly anxious, but there was nothing they could do. The battle between true fire and spirit refinement realm was no longer something they could participate in. Actually, one of the reasons was because Chu Xiu had attracted too much hatred. He had offended almost half of the pugilistic world. Previously, because of his strength, and because he was worried about the hidden devil lineage, there were actually not many people who dared to kill Chu Xiu. That was because the price was too high, and it was not worth it. Now that Jingchan Jizong had taken the initiative to kill Chu Xiu, it was not a bad idea for them to hit him when he was down. Emperor Chen Qingdi frowned and threw out a punch. The barrier of the array in front of him was like a fragile mirror that was directly smashed by his punch. After all, Chu Xiu was a good friend of his disciple Xie Xiaolu. Furthermore, he admired Chu Xiu's decisive and ruthless character. He did not mind helping Chu Xiu now. However, the moment Chen Qingdi made his move, Kuang Xieyue stood in front of Chen Qingdi and sneered. The battle just now was not satisfying enough. Let's continue. Chen Qingdi sneered disdainfully. Heavenly Gate Divine General? You're just a cowardly rat. If you want to kill someone, do it openly. What's the point of only hitting someone when they're down here? You're not even as good as that old monk from Sabodhi Monastery. If Kuang Shiyue really dared to kill Chu Xiu at all costs, Chen Qingdi would still think highly of him. However, the so-called Heavenly Gate Divine General only knew how to hit someone when they were down. What the hell? However, disdain was disdain. Kuang Shiyue had suffered some losses in their previous battle, but he hadn't really been defeated by Emperor Chen Qingdi. Now that Kuang Shiyue was trying his best to stop him, Chen Qingdi could not help Chu Xiu for a while. Among the warriors in the true fire spirit refinement realm, those who were related to Chu Xiu were almost ready to make a move. However, Chu Xiu had offended even more people. Lu Chonglu and the others pondered for a while. They had various concerns, so they chose to remain neutral and did not make a move. Sheng Beixian from the Omniscient sect also thought about it. In the end, he chose to stay put and watch. The Omniscient sect was a traitor of the former Kunlun devil cult. Their relationship with the Yinma clan had never been good. Right now, the Omniscient sect had chosen to follow the lead of the moon-worshipping cult. However, Dong Huangtai was not here, so Sheng Beixian chose not to make a move. Meanwhile, on Chu Xiu's side, Jingchan Jizong was determined to kill him. The Buddhist light around him was resplendent and shot into the sky. His aged body erupted with power that was stronger than his peak. The pure demonic aura around Chu Xiu suddenly erupted. It was as black as ink. It could be said to be the pinnacle of demonic power. From Lu Jianghe's point of view, this aura even resembled Dugu Weiwei's. The saber slashed down, and the space in front of him seemed to be torn apart. In front of the saber, everything turned into a painting. The array barrier was easily shattered, and the saber went straight for Jingchan Jizong. Ethereal red dust slash. When the peerless saber technique that belonged to Dugu Weiwei appeared, even Jingchan Jizong's heart trembled. He held the 7 treasures glazed staff horizontally in front of him. Scorching Buddhist light rose around him as he chanted a Buddhist mantra. Under the blinding Buddhist light, the glazed tree descended and blocked his saber. With a loud bang, the glazed tree shattered. Jingchan Jizong took a few steps back, and an extremely obvious saber mark appeared on the 7 treasures glazed staff in his hand. Everyone present looked at Chu Xiu in astonishment. Facing an expert at Jingchan Jizong's level, Chu Xiu was actually able to repel him in a one-on-one battle. This was somewhat terrifying. Jingchan Jizong took a deep breath. The more powerful Chu Xiu displayed, the more determined he was to kill Chu Xiu. Now Chu Xiu had such strength. If Chu Xiu stepped into the heaven-earth mystic illumination realm in the future, Bodhi Zen Monastery might really be destroyed in Chu Xiu's hands, just as Xiao Moha had predicted. Jingchan Jizong pressed his palms together as an even more intense Buddhist light erupted from his body. Through the Buddhist light, one could even see a golden relic rapidly spinning in his dantian. Upon seeing this scene, everyone present was alarmed. Jingchan Jizong had even expended the power of his relic. How much grudge did he have with Chu Xiu? The relic of the Buddhist lineage was what ordinary warriors called the true martial core. However, there were some subtle changes. However, no matter what changes there were, the true martial core was extremely important to warriors. Once the true martial core was destroyed, it was equivalent to severing 99% of one's strength. It was no different from having one's martial arts crippled. Now, Jingchan Jizong was actually overdrawing the power of the true martial core. Wasn't he afraid that he would become a cripple after killing Chu Xiu? What kind of grudge did he have? Endless Buddhist light condensed into a Tathagata Dharma form behind Jingchan Jizong. 1,000 hands bloomed behind him, and at the same time, they formed Buddhist seals. When they landed, the powerful fluctuations shattered the array barrier in the entire space. It was as though even the Avicii hell would be completely shattered by this attack. The expressions of everyone present changed slightly. The old monk had attacked with all his might, and the power was truly terrifying. His attack had actually destroyed a portion of the array's runes. This power was probably close to the heaven-earth mystic illumination realm. Of course, this was a good thing for everyone present. If his attack could completely destroy the array formation, they could take the opportunity to escape. Thousand Hand to Thagata, hell subduing demons. The terrifying power made Chushio feel what true death was like. At that moment, Chushio's strength was almost exhausted. Even the current Chushio could not hold on for long after using the 7 limits and ethereal slash. However, the more desperate the situation was, the more the crazy ferocity in Chushio's bones was stirred up. He did not know why Jingchan Jizong wanted to kill him. He only knew that if someone wanted to kill him, he would kill them. Even if it was an immortal or Buddha, he would tear off a piece of their flesh. Give me the blood demon transformation technique. Chushio suddenly shouted at Lu Jianghe. Lu Jianghe was taken aback as he hurriedly said, "Kid, don't tell me you're preparing to risk your life? Calm down. That cultivation technique will damage your essence. Why are you fighting this old thing head-on? Now that the array barrier has been shattered, you should try your best to survive. When your reinforcements are free, the danger will naturally be resolved. When that happens, no matter how serious your injuries are, my blood demon technique will be able to recover." I said, "Give me the blood demon transformation technique." Chushio's eyes were already filled with extreme madness. At such a critical moment that concerned his life, Chushio was never prepared to rely on others. He would not rely on others either. Jingchan Jizong wanted Chushio to die, so he would drag the old monk down with him. Chapter 834. In terms of calmness, Chushio was sometimes calmer than anyone else. Chushio still had the demeanor of remaining calm, even if MT Tai collapsed in front of him. However, if one were to talk about madness, the fearless aura that Chushio exuded when he went berserk made Lu Jianghe a little uncertain. He quickly passed the blood demon transformation technique to Chushio. He even had a feeling that if he didn't agree to Chushio's request, this guy would immediately crush the blood soul pearl and perish together with him. The blood demon transformation technique was not difficult for the current Chushio, because it was just a technique to use the blood demon power. However, because Lu Jianghe was too timid, he would rather take revenge than fight desperately with others, so he sealed this mystic art. For so many years, the only person who had used this mystic art was actually Yuan Tianfang. When Yuan Tianfang used the blood demon transformation technique, he forced Chushio to use the heaven and earth demon lament great compassion mantra that he couldn't master for the time being. Now that Chushio used this mystic art, it had the power to truly change the world. Even Lu Jianghe did not expect that the upper limit of his mystic art could reach this level. As the great blood demon transformation technique was formed, Chushio's face turned pale. It was as if all the blood in his body had been sucked dry. A blood-red light soared into the sky, and even Chushio's eyes were stained with a boundless blood-red color. He took a step forward, and the entire space was almost covered by a sea of blood. The surrounding people immediately dodged to the side, and their eyes were filled with astonishment. Is this still the power that a real pellet state can have? Jingchan Jizong's expression remained unchanged. Buddha's light bloomed around Thousand Hand Buddha, and he continued to crush down. But at this moment he suddenly frowned. A sound like a ghost crying suddenly came, making people feel a chill in their hearts. It was as if some ferocious demons and ghosts were born. The surrounding people also had ugly expressions. Even if they were martial artists from the demonic Tao, they still couldn't stand this extremely fierce and evil aura. Everyone took a closer look, and found that the voice was actually coming from Chushio's mouth. It was like a curse, but it was extremely evil. In the next moment, the voice resounded from the boundless sea of blood. It was like a great bell that struck everyone's heart. Ghosts and gods howled. The heavens wept, and blood rained. Great compassion mantra of heaven and earth conquering demons lament the heavens. This cultivation technique was extremely evil to begin with, and now, Chushio had even used the blood demon transformation art to activate this supreme cultivation technique that combined the 7 styles of great compassion into one. The might of this cultivation technique was simply beyond everyone's imagination. Even Ing Sanshu and Su Yin had solemn expressions on their faces. As the blood rain fell, the Buddhist light around Thousand Hand Buddha's body gradually dimmed, and the hand seals also gradually dissipated. However, at this moment, Jingchan Jizong helplessly chanted a Buddhist name in a low voice. His 7 treasures glazed staff emitted a resplendent 7-colored light that fused with thousand-hand Buddha. The Buddhist light that was about to be extinguished in the blood rain actually emitted a 7-colored light once again, and the Buddhist might flourished. Sacrificing the artifact spirit? Good idea, but do you think you're the only one with a divine armament? Chushio's face was already as pale as a sheet. He stabbed the heavenly demon dance in his hand into the ground. In an instant, a hungry ghost's cry came from the heavenly demon dance. Of course, this time, the hungry ghost realm's artifact spirit was really crying. In the next moment, the evil and violent aura on the heavenly demon dance was completely extracted and injected into the array beneath their feet. In an instant, the array and the entire space instantly boiled like oil being poured into a raging fire. The evil aura intersected with the blood rain in the sky. Everything was being destroyed and collapsing. Standing in the middle, Chushio stared at Jingchanjizong. His voice sounded like it came from hell. It was extremely eerie and erratic. Die. In the next moment, thousand-hand Buddha collapsed with a loud bang. The Buddhist light around Jingchanjizong was extinguished. When he raised his hand, Jingchanjizong realized that his body was collapsing like thousand-hand Buddha. However, he was neither afraid nor angry. Instead, there was a trace of indignation in his eyes. Everything had originally been part of Jingchanjizong's plan. He had killed Chushio and used himself to appease the Ima lineage's anger. Now he had died at Chushio's hands. Sabodhi Monastery was in trouble. The old monk, who had still been concerned about the sect even before his death, finally collapsed and turned into a handful of ashes. The only thing that made him feel at ease was that he had died, but Chushio would not survive either. The future of Sabodhi Monastery would be preserved. He had used so many life-risking mystic techniques in succession. Most importantly, he had poured the power of the artifact spirit into the array. Only then could he launch a pincer attack and kill Jingchanjizong. However, a portion of the array that had been destroyed by the fight between the two could no longer withstand it. The array began to collapse and explode on a large scale. In the deepest part of the array, Chushio took a step forward. However, like Jingchanjizong, the ground beneath his feet began to collapse. However, the difference was that Jingchanjizong was killed by the heaven and earth intersecting demon laments heaven weeping great compassion mantra. As for Chushio, he was unable to withstand the backlash. His body had long lost its vitality and dissipated like ashes. Wei Shuya fought fiercely with Butian like a madman. However, in the next moment, a loud bang resounded and the array completely collapsed. Chushio's figure was also completely destroyed by the array's explosion. Everyone present stopped and defended against the impact of the array. After a while, everyone looked at the battlefield. At this moment, it was already a mess. The array set up by High Heaven sect had completely collapsed. However, apart from these things, no corpses could be seen. Whether it was Chushio or Jingchanjizong, they seemed to have turned into ashes. There were only 2 things left in the center of the entire array. One was the 7 treasures glazed cane that had lost its rainbow glow and had a huge saber mark on it. The other was the heavenly demon dance that had lost all its demonic aura and spirituality, and had broken into 2. Everyone present fell into a brief silence and sluggishness. Even they could not accept such an outcome. Jingchanjizong was actually dead? A true fire spirit refinement state powerhouse from the Sabodhi Monastery, who had experienced countless tribulations, had tempered his physical body and will to the peak, and could still retain his strongest combat power. When facing a real pellet state martial artist, he actually died together with the opponent. Especially the Great Compassion Mantra of Chushio's Great Compassion Mantra of Heaven and Earth conquering demons. This evil technique even made powerhouses like Su Yun and Ning Sanshu vigilant. This technique was so evil that it didn't seem like it could be used by humans. It was close to the category of evil techniques. Lu Fengxian, Mei Qinglian, and others also couldn't accept this outcome. In their impression, Chushio was simply invincible, let alone dead. Chushio could solve any tricky situation in front of him, but now he was dead. How is this possible? This is impossible. LV Fengxian looked at Kuang Shiyue, Sun Zuchang, the patriarch of the Lu clan Butianan, Chang Yunzi, and the others who had tried to stop him. His eyes were filled with a ferocious killing intent. In the past, Chu Xiu could go to the Yunnu Palace to save him, and even help him vent his anger by destroying the Yunnu Palace. Now he could also kill these people for Chu Xiu to avenge Chu Xiu as long as he was given time. No one saw the murderous intent in Lu Fengxian's eyes, but no one could ignore the murderous intent in Wei Shuya's eyes. Looking at these people around him, Wei Shuya squeezed a sentence from his teeth. Good, good, good. Everyone did a good job. Let's take our time to settle today's score. For so many years, except for the day when the 5 skyscraping demons of the 9th heaven mountain were destroyed, Wei Shuya had rarely been so sad and angry. He had spent too much effort on Chu Xiu. He even gave the young people of the Yinma clan who followed him to Chu Xiu. Although Chu Xiu was not his disciple, in Wei Shuya's eyes, Chu Xiu was his successor, and he was even closer to him than his disciple. Therefore, even though Chu Xiu had killed Yuan Tianfang, Wei Shuya did not say anything. Moreover, Chu Xiu was the future hope of the Yinma clan. The entire hidden devil lineage was currently lifeless. Even among the younger generation, there were no outstanding figures. Only Chu Xiu was able to carry the cauldron. Wei Shuya had even thought about it. When Chu Xiu reached the spiritual cultivation realm with real fire, and when he became one of the leaders of the Yinma clan, he could retire with peace of mind. But now, Chu Xiu died in such an inexplicable way. He did not even know the reason why he was killed. He died together with the monks of Sabodi Monastery. Sun Zuchang and the others felt a little uncomfortable, but they were not worried. They were not the ones who killed Chu Xiu. If the Yinma clan wanted to cause trouble, they would first go to Sabodi Monastery. Most importantly, there were so many people involved. The Yinma clan was not the moon-worshipping cult. How could they cause trouble for so many people? Especially when there was the existence of the Gate of Heaven. Among the people present, the only ones who felt sad were Zhang Qingzhen, Zhong Xian and the others. They were not deadly enemies with Chu Xiu, but as the most outstanding warriors of the younger generation, they were each other's opponents. But now that Chu Xiu had killed Jingchan Jizong, he had already far surpassed them. From now on, Chu Xiu's title as the number 1 of the younger generation had been firmly established. Moreover, they would never have the chance to surpass him again. Fang Qishao hugged his sword and stared blankly at the scene. He was still muttering, "Impossible, impossible. How could Chu Xiu die? He had so many schemes, and was more cunning than anyone else. He should not have died." Duguli stood beside Fang Qishao and said lightly, "Nothing is impossible. This is the real Jianghu. You were glorious and admired by thousands just a moment ago. But the next moment, you might become a cup of soil and only exist in legends." Fang Qishao grinned. He wanted to laugh, but he could not. Just now he had asked Duguli for help through the formation barrier, but Duguli pretended not to hear him. He did not ask why Duguli did not make a move because he already knew the answer. But even if he watched Chu Xiu turn into dust in front of him, Fang Qishao did not believe that Chu Xiu would die. Chapter 835. Some things didn't matter whether they believed it or not. In the eyes of others, Chu Xiu was already dead. Not even a speck of him was left. Of course, this was good news for Sun Zuchang and the others. It was also good news for most of the people present, because the High Firmament Sect's spirit array had been completely destroyed. The fluctuations from the fight between Chu Xiu and Jingchan Jizong had reached the level of the heaven and earth profound enlightenment realm. The destructive power of the spirit array was huge, especially when Chu Xiu's last attack completely destroyed the spirit array. Everyone could enter and leave with ease. Su Yun sighed and walked over to collect the 7 treasures glazed staff that Jingchan Jizong had left behind. Although the relationship between the Great Light Temple and Sabodi Monastery was not good, it was still passable. Although both sides had different understandings of martial Tao and Buddhist Dharma, one was in the south while the other was in the north, so there was no conflict between the orthodoxies. Now that Jingchan Kongdu was dead without a corpse left, bringing his weapon back to Sabodi Monastery would be an explanation. Wei Shuya also walked over and took away the remains of Chu Xiu's heavenly demon dance. Before he left, he glanced at Sun Zuchang and the others. When everyone was scared, Wei Shuya said in a hoarse voice. Our hidden devil clan can't compare to the moon-worshipping cult, but that doesn't mean we're easy to bully. How dare you hit a junior martial artist when he's down? Haha, what a disgrace. Qin Chaoxian and the other two snorted at the same time, expressing their stance. Their feelings for Chu Xiu weren't as deep as Wei Shuya's. At the same time, they didn't think that the hidden devil clan would do anything without Chu Xiu. However, Chu Xiu was nominally the successor of the hidden devil clan. In the end, he was killed in front of the 4 true fire spirit refinement realm powerhouses of the hidden devil clan. This was a resounding slap in the face. If the hidden devil clan didn't say anything, wouldn't they be more cowardly than the Sun family? The others remained silent. Only Kuang Shiyue sneered twice. In his opinion, revenge was simply a joke. He came for the key. After getting the key, he would return to the Gate of Heaven in Kunlun. At that time, would the Yinma clan dare to come to the Gate of Heaven to find trouble with him? What a joke. However, Kuang Shiyue suddenly thought of something. Why did he come down the mountain? For the key. What about the key now? Kuang Shiyue looked forward. That place was already in ruins, and there was no aura coming from it. The key had probably been stirred up somewhere by the turbulence of the fierce battle, or had been directly smashed in the fight between the two of them. Kuang Shiyue's face darkened at the thought of this. In fact, when Evil Moon was not crazy, he was quite reliable. But as long as he was crazy, he would not care about anything, just like now. He had come for the key, but in the end he was competing with Chu Xiu. Just now, if he had not insisted on intercepting Chen Qingdi and had chosen to take the key, he would probably be able to go back and report to the Gate of Heaven. Just as everyone was thinking about different things, there was a sudden violent tremor around them. The entire Lingxiao Hall began to tremble. Everyone hurriedly jumped out of the Lingxiao Hall. They saw that the entire space was on the verge of collapse. Large black cracks appeared in the space. It was obvious that this place could not hold on any longer, and was about to collapse. Previously, Black Martial Sect's Pu Yangyi had said that this place could not accommodate experts of the mysterious realm of heaven and earth. However, in the battle between Chu Xiu and Jingchan Jizong, he had forcefully unleashed the power of the mysterious realm of heaven and earth. This had also caused the entire space to collapse. With the collapse of the secret realm, everyone had to leave in a hurry. Otherwise, if they were trapped here, the power brought about by the collapse of the space would be unstoppable. What was originally an ordinary exploration of the secret realm's ruins had turned out to be enough to shock the entire Jianghu, because the people who died were too powerful. It only took 3 days for the news to spread throughout the Jianghu. When this news spread, the Jianghu was in an uproar. The ascetic monks of Sabodi Monastery were powerful existences who did not regard themselves as human beings. None of them were ordinary people. In recent years, Chu Xiu had set off countless storms in the Jianghu. When it came to the limelight, even little celestial master Zhang Qingzhen could not compare to him. In the end, these two people, who were originally unrelated to each other, had perished together in the 6 illusory realms. This made people sigh. The affairs of the world were unpredictable. Talented people appeared in every generation. How could they see their predecessors buried in the soil? However, most people in the Jianghu were happy to hear about Chu Xiu's death, except for Chu Xiu's good friends. The demonic Dao lineage had been on the rise recently. Yi Xiaonan had suppressed all the outstanding heroes, but Chu Xiu, a junior martial artist, had actually dared to be so arrogant and savage. This made many people somewhat displeased with Chu Xiu. Now that Chu Xiu was dead, the diabolism had no successor. At least the pressure on the righteous path sects had been reduced a lot. However, there were still some insightful people who were worried that this would set off a third war between the righteous path and the diabolism. Regardless of whether Chu Xiu was righteous or diabolism, the Jianghu had never been composed of one person or one faction. Since everyone was making a living in the Jianghu, they had to abide by some rules. Although some rules were not explicitly stated, they were agreed upon by common practice. Chu Xiu was a junior warrior of the Yinma lineage. Even if he was the successor of the Yinma lineage, it was normal for him to be killed. However, he could be killed by Zhang Qingzhen or Zhong Xian, But he could not die in the hands of a senior warrior of the righteous path. Bullying the weak was not only bad for one's reputation, but it would also cause chaos in the rules of the Jianghu. Today you killed an outstanding disciple of my sect. Tomorrow, I will kill an outstanding disciple of your sect. In the end, there would not be many young people left in the Jianghu. There would only be a bunch of old men fighting there. This kind of thing was basically a lose-lose situation. Therefore, no matter which sect it was, they would try to avoid this kind of thing from happening. Zhang Qingjin used to occupy the first place on the Longhu list for more than 10 years. Even when he went out to wander the Jianghu, he did not see Wei Shiya and the other big shots of the Yinma lineage, or the 9 great divine magispriests of the moon-worshipping cult come to kill him. This was the reason. Of course, this reason was based on the premise that both sides had a background. If you did not have a backer, no one would have any qualms about killing you. This time, everyone was very confused. Jingchan Jizong, an eminent monk of the Sabodi monastery, came up and tried to kill Chu Xiu. It was obvious that he had broken the rules. Did the Sabodi monastery not care about the rules of the Jianghu? Or did they not care about the Yinma lineage at all? For ordinary people in the Jianghu, they only discussed this matter for a few days and then did not pay attention to it. The world would continue to spin without anyone. Chu Xiu was not God. If he died, it would have no effect on the whole Jianghu. Only some righteous path sects were paying close attention to the movements of the Yinma lineage. They wanted to see how they were going to deal with this matter, and whether they would really make it big in the end. The Yinma lineage was not the Sun family of Jiangdong. When something happened, they could only endure it. They could not bear to be slapped in the face in front of them. Just as Jingchan Jizong had thought before, if he did not die and gave his life to the Yinma lineage, it might divide the Yinma lineage. Except for Wei Shiya, the other warriors of the Yinma lineage would not stand up. But now, the entire Yinma lineage was in a violent mood. They might vent it out at any time. On the surface, the Jianghu was calm, but there were undercurrents surging in the dark. A storm was coming. In the mountain Tua province of the southern barbarian land. For the people of the Central Plains, the southern barbarian land was the southern barbarian land. But in fact, the entire area of the southern barbarian land was larger than West Chu. Such a large area was divided into 36 provinces by the people of the southern barbarian land. Of course, the people of these 36 provinces added up were not as many as a county of northern Yan or eastern Qi. The southern barbarian land was close to the 100,000 mountains. The environment was harsh, humid, and rainy. There were primitive forests, snakes, insects, and beasts everywhere. It was not suitable for people to live. Therefore, there was no country in the entire southern barbarian land. West Chu, which was closest to it, had no interest in the southern barbarian land. Therefore, there were only some indigenous people living a very poor and primitive life. But it was this environment that was located in the Sabodi monastery, one of the 2 Buddhist sects in the north and the south. For others, the southern barbarian land was not suitable for living. But for the Sabodi monastery, this kind of place, where there was no disturbance from outsiders and far away from the world, was the best holy place for cultivation. When the ascetic monks of the Sabodi monastery were qualified to wander in the Jianghu, the first place they went to was not the Central Plains, but to live alone in the southern barbarian land without anything. They even sealed their true qi and couldn't use martial arts. They only relied on their own perseverance to survive alone in the southern barbarian land for several years to hone their physical body and will. Only when they felt that they were ready would they be qualified to step into the Jianghu. No one forced them to do this kind of thing, and no one would set a fixed time. But there was once a monk of the Sabodi monastery, who always felt that there was a loophole in his heart. So he had been practicing hard in the dense forest of the southern barbarian land. In this way, he practiced for more than 200 years. Until his lifespan was about to run out, he finally had an epiphany and stepped into the mysterious realm of heaven and earth. Of course, this kind of thing only existed in legends. No one could tell whether it was true or not. At this time, in the Sabodi monastery, the head of the Vajra monastery of the Great Light Temple, Su Yan, personally came to the Sabodi monastery to deliver the relic of Jingchan Jizong. It was the 7 treasures glazed cane that had been slashed by Chushio and had lost its spirituality. This was not the first time Su Yan came to the Sabodhi monastery, but every time he came, he felt that this place was a little too deserted. There were only about 100 monks in such a big monastery. Maybe there were more monks practicing hard in the outside world than in the sect. If it was the Great Light Temple, there would have been a big crisis. Su Yan handed the 7 treasures glazed cane to an old monk of the Sabodhi monastery and sighed. Everyone, my condolences. You're tuning in to the Echoes of the Heart YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.